Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're diving deep into the messy, complicated world of relationships through some absolutely wild Reddit stories that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and dating in general. I've got a collection of relationship drama that ranges from heartbreaking to infuriating to downright bizarre, and honestly, some of these situations are so intense I had to read them twice just to process what was happening. Before we jump in, if you're new here, I go through relationship stories and Reddit drama as a whole pretty much every day, so definitely subscribe if you want more content like this. And if you stick around until the end, I promise you'll hear some stories that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, the last few are completely unhinged. For now, grab whatever and get cozy. Our first story comes from someone who's caught between two of the most important relationships in his life, and honestly, the situation is tearing him apart. My girlfriend wants me to cut contact with my best friend. I'm 24, and I've been dating my girlfriend Emma for about 8 months now. Things have been really great between us, but we've hit this massive roadblock that's causing serious problems in our relationship. The issue is my best friend Jessica, who I've known since we were kids. Jessica and I have been best friends for over 15 years. We grew up on the same street, went to the same schools, and she's basically been like a sister to me my entire life. We've been there for each other through everything: family divorces, deaths, breakups, college stress, job hunting, you name it. She's one of the most important people in my world, and I genuinely can't imagine my life without her friendship. When Emma and I first started dating, I was completely upfront about my friendship with Jessica. I told her we're really close, that we talk regularly, and that she's going to be a permanent part of my life. Emma seemed fine with it at first, even met Jessica a few times, and they seemed to get along okay. But over the past few months, Emma's attitude toward Jessica has completely changed, and now she's making demands that are tearing me apart inside. It started with small comments. Emma would make little remarks about how often Jessica and I texted, or how I'd always answer when Jessica called. She'd say things like, "You talk to Jessica more than you talk to me," or "Why does she always need your attention?" I tried to reassure Emma that Jessica was just a friend, and that my romantic relationship with Emma was completely different from my friendship with Jessica, but the comments kept getting worse. Then Emma started getting upset about our friendship traditions. Jessica and I have this thing where we get dinner every Friday night and catch up on our weeks. We've been doing this for years, way before Emma was in the picture. It's just our time to decompress and maintain our friendship. Emma started calling these dinners dates and saying it was inappropriate for me to have weekly one-on-one time with another woman. She said it made her feel like she was competing with Jessica for my time and attention. Last month, things escalated when Jessica was going through a really tough breakup with her boyfriend of 2 years. She was absolutely devastated and needed someone to talk to, so she called me crying at like 11 at night. I spent about 2 hours on the phone with her, just listening and trying to help her feel better. Emma was at my apartment when this happened, and she was furious. She said it was completely inappropriate for me to have such an intimate conversation with another woman while my girlfriend was right there. She accused me of prioritizing Jessica's feelings over hers and said I was being emotionally unfaithful. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago when Jessica texted me asking if I wanted to go hiking this weekend, something we used to do all the time before I started dating Emma. When Emma saw the text, she absolutely lost it. She said she was tired of feeling like the third wheel in her own relationship, and that if I really loved her, I would choose her over Jessica. She gave me an ultimatum: either cut contact with Jessica completely, or she's done with our relationship. I've been trying to find a compromise, but Emma won't budge. She says there's no middle ground when it comes to having a female best friend while in a serious relationship. She claims that opposite-sex friendships are inherently inappropriate when you're committed to someone else, and that if I can't see why my friendship with Jessica is disrespectful to our relationship, then I'm not mature enough to be in a serious relationship. Emma's been giving me the silent treatment for the past week, waiting for me to make my decision. She says she loves me and wants to build a future together, but that future can't include Jessica. She's told me that Jessica is obviously in love with me, even though Jessica has never given me any indication that she sees me as anything more than a friend. Emma says I'm being naive and that Jessica is just waiting for our relationship to fail so she can swoop in. I'm completely torn apart by this situation. I love Emma and I can see a future with her, but the idea of cutting Jessica out of my life feels like cutting off a limb. Jessica has been my constant support system for 15 years. She knows everything about me. She's seen me at my worst and she's always been there when I needed someone. The thought of just throwing away 15 years of friendship because my girlfriend is insecure about it feels wrong. But I also understand that Emma has feelings about this, and I don't want to dismiss her concerns entirely. Maybe I have been too focused on maintaining my friendship with Jessica without considering how it might affect Emma. Maybe I haven't been setting appropriate boundaries. I keep going back and forth between thinking Emma is being unreasonably controlling and wondering if she has a valid point about prioritizing our relationship. Jessica knows what's going on, and she's told me she doesn't want to be the reason Emma and I break up. She's offered to step back from our friendship if that's what I need to do to save my relationship, but I can see how much that offer hurts her. She's losing her best friend too, and she didn't do anything wrong except care about me as a friend. I feel like no matter what I choose, I'm going to lose someone I care about deeply. If I choose Emma, I lose 15 years of friendship and one of the most important people in my life. If I choose Jessica, I lose the woman I love and the relationship I've been building toward a future with. Emma says this decision will show her where her priorities really lie in my life, and that if I can't choose her, then I was never really committed to our relationship in the first place. The worst part is that I feel like I'm being forced to choose between two completely different types of love. My love for Jessica is platonic and familial, like loving a sister. My love for Emma is romantic and passionate, and about building a life together. They're not the same thing, and I don't understand why I have to give up one to have the other. Some of my friends think Emma is being controlling and manipulative, while others think I've been insensitive to her feelings, and that I should prioritize my romantic relationship over my friendship. I honestly don't know what the right answer is anymore. That story is absolutely heartbreaking, because there's no clean answer here. Emma's insecurity is understandable to some degree, but demanding that someone cut off their best friend of 15 years is a massive red flag. The fact that she won't even consider compromise suggests this might be more about control than genuine concern. At the same time, you have to wonder if there were signs along the way that boundaries needed to be clearer. Either way, being forced to choose between a lifelong friendship and a romantic relationship is just brutal. This kind of ultimatum rarely ends well for anyone involved. Let's move into our next story, which deals with a different kind of boundary issue that's causing major trust problems. My boyfriend still texts his ex every day. I'm 26 and I've been with my boyfriend Jake for about 7 months. Overall, our relationship has been really good. We have great chemistry, similar values, and I genuinely thought we were building something meaningful together. But I recently discovered something that's making me question everything about our relationship and whether I can trust him. Last weekend, Jake left his phone on my kitchen counter while he went to take a shower at my apartment. His phone kept buzzing with notifications, and after the 5th or 6th buzz, I glanced over just to see if it might be something urgent. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were multiple text messages from someone named Melissa with heart emojis next to her name in his contacts. The preview showed messages like, "Thinking about you today" and "Hope you're having a good day, baby." When Jake got out of the shower, I asked him who Melissa was. He got this weird look on his face and said she was his ex-girlfriend from college. He said they'd dated for 3 years and broke up about 8 months ago, just a month before we started dating. He claimed they stayed friends because they ended things amicably and that the messages were just friendly check-ins. I asked to see the conversation, and Jake got defensive. He said I was being paranoid and that looking through his phone would be a violation of his privacy. He said he had nothing to hide, but that relationships need trust, and me demanding to see his messages showed I didn't trust him. He turned it around on me, saying he was disappointed that I would spy on his phone, and that maybe I wasn't ready for a mature relationship if I couldn't handle him having female friends. But I couldn't let it go. The heart emojis, the pet names, the daily contact with an ex he'd been with for 3 years. It all felt like way too much for a casual friendship. I told Jake that most people would be uncomfortable with their partner texting an ex every single day, especially with terms of endearment like baby. He said I was being insecure and controlling, and that he wasn't going to change his friendships just because I felt threatened. Over the next few days, I started paying more attention to Jake's phone habits. He was constantly texting someone, and he'd always turn his phone face down when I was around. He'd step out of the room to take certain calls, claiming it was work stuff. When we were watching movies or having dinner, he'd be smiling at his phone and typing away. But when I'd ask what was funny, he'd just say, "Nothing," or "Just work stuff." The whole thing was driving me crazy, so I decided to do some social media investigating. I found Melissa's Instagram and Facebook, and what I discovered made everything so much worse. She was absolutely gorgeous, like model-level beautiful. Her social media was full of photos of her and Jake together from when they were dating. Beach vacations, fancy dinners, concerts, family gatherings. They looked incredibly happy together, like the perfect couple. But the really disturbing part was that some of the photos were recent. There were pictures from just a few weeks ago of Melissa and Jake having coffee together, with captions like, "So good to catch up with this one," and "Some people never change," and I love that about them. Jake had never mentioned meeting up with Melissa in person. When I asked him about hanging out with friends, he'd only mention his guy friends or co-workers. I confronted Jake about the coffee meetup photos, and he admitted that he'd been seeing Melissa occasionally for coffee or lunch. He said they had a lot of mutual friends and would sometimes end up at the same social events. He claimed it was all completely innocent and that I was reading too much into normal, friendly interactions. He said Melissa was an important part of his life for 3 years, and he wasn't going to pretend she didn't exist just because it made me uncomfortable. When I asked why he hadn't told me about these meetups, Jake said he didn't mention them because he knew I'd overreact, which is exactly what was happening now. He said he was trying to protect my feelings by not bringing up every interaction he had with Melissa, but that his transparency was clearly not appreciated. I asked Jake point blank if he still had feelings for Melissa. He said no, that they were just friends now, and that he was committed to our relationship. But when I asked if he'd be willing to reduce contact with her to help me feel more secure, he refused. He said he wouldn't be controlled or manipulated into cutting off friendships, and that if I couldn't handle him having a relationship with his ex, then maybe we weren't compatible. The whole situation has been eating me alive. I find myself constantly wondering what they're talking about, whether Jake compares me to Melissa, whether he misses their relationship. When Jake is texting on his phone, I automatically assume it's her. When he's distracted or seems distant, I wonder if he's thinking about Melissa. It's making me feel crazy and insecure in ways I've never experienced before. Some of my friends think Jake's behaviour is completely inappropriate, and that daily contact with an ex, especially with pet names and secret meetups, is basically emotional cheating. They say he's keeping Melissa as a backup option, and that no committed partner should be maintaining that level of intimacy with an ex. Other friends think I'm being paranoid and controlling, and that Jake has a right to maintain friendships with people from his past. The worst part is that I feel like I'm becoming someone I don't like. I've never been the jealous, snooping type of girlfriend, but this situation is bringing out all my worst insecurities. I feel like I'm constantly competing with a ghost, with this perfect 3-year relationship that Jake shared with someone else. I look at those photos of them together and wonder if he wishes he was still with her instead of me. Jake says I need to decide whether I trust him or not, and that if I don't, then we should break up. He says he's not going to change his friendship with Melissa, and that any future girlfriend will have to accept that she's part of his life. He's made it clear that he sees my discomfort as my problem to deal with, not something that requires any compromise or adjustment on his part. I love Jake, and I want to make this work, but I don't know how to get past this. Every day that goes by with him texting Melissa makes me feel more and more like I'm sharing my boyfriend with someone else. I don't know if I'm being reasonable or if I'm sabotaging a good relationship because of my own insecurities. This situation is so frustrating because Jake is gaslighting the hell out of his girlfriend while maintaining what sounds like an emotional affair. Daily texting with heart emojis and pet names with an X is not normal friendship behaviour, and the secret coffee dates make it even worse. The fact that he's turning this around and making her feel crazy for having completely reasonable concerns is classic manipulation. No one should have to compete with their partner's ex for attention and affection. Trust your gut on this one. Our third story takes us into household dynamics and the age-old battle over domestic responsibilities. My husband refuses to do any housework. I'm 28 and I've been married to Marcus for 4 years. We both work full-time jobs, but somehow all the household responsibilities have fallen entirely on me, and I'm reaching my breaking point. When we first got married, we both worked demanding jobs and split household tasks pretty evenly. Marcus would do dishes, I'd do laundry, he'd vacuum, I'd clean bathrooms. It felt fair and balanced. But over the past 2 years, Marcus has gradually stopped contributing to any household maintenance, and now I'm doing literally everything, while he acts like it's not his responsibility. Marcus works as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. He leaves the house at 8 in the morning and gets home around 6:30 most nights. I work as a marketing coordinator at a non-profit, and my schedule is pretty similar. We're both putting in 40 to 45 hours a week, so our work commitments are basically equivalent. But somehow Marcus has convinced himself that because he makes slightly more money than me, household work should be entirely my job. The division of labour in our house right now is completely insane. I do all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the laundry, all the grocery shopping, all the meal planning, all the bill paying, and all the household organisation. Marcus literally does nothing. He comes home from work, changes into sweatpants, turns on the TV, and that's it for the rest of the evening. He'll sit on the couch playing video games or watching sports while I'm in the kitchen making dinner, doing dishes, folding laundry, and cleaning up after both of us. When I bring up the unequal distribution of housework, Marcus gets defensive and says he works hard all day and needs to relax when he gets home. He acts like I don't also work hard all day and might also need some time to relax. He says his job is more stressful than mine because he deals with numbers and deadlines, while I just do creative stuff that's more like a hobby than real work. The dismissive way he talks about my career makes me furious, but he doesn't seem to understand why that's hurtful. Marcus also uses weaponized incompetence to get out of helping. If I ask him to do laundry, he'll put everything on the wrong settings and shrink half my clothes. If I ask him to cook dinner, he'll burn whatever he's making and then order takeout, claiming he's just not good at cooking. If I ask him to clean the bathroom, he'll do such a terrible job that I have to redo everything anyway. It's obvious that he's doing these things badly on purpose, so I'll stop asking him to help. The breaking point came last weekend when I was sick with the flu. I had a fever of 102, body aches, the whole 9 yards. I could barely get out of bed. I asked Marcus if he could handle the household stuff for a couple days while I recovered, and he said sure. But when I dragged myself out of bed on Sunday afternoon, the house was completely trashed. There were dirty dishes piled in the sink, takeout containers all over the coffee table, his clothes thrown everywhere, and the trash was overflowing. He'd literally done nothing except make more mess for me to clean up. When I asked Marcus what happened to him taking care of things while I was sick, he said he'd been busy with a work project and didn't have time. But I could see his gaming console was still warm from being used recently, and his browser history showed he'd spent hours watching YouTube videos. He hadn't been busy with work at all. He just ignored all the household responsibilities and assumed I'd deal with everything once I felt better. I told Marcus that his complete refusal to help with housework was making me resentful and affecting how I felt about our marriage. He said I was being dramatic and that lots of marriages have traditional gender roles where the wife handles the home stuff. He said his mother always did everything for his father and they had a happy marriage for 35 years before his dad passed away. He doesn't understand why I can't just accept that this is how our household works. The problem is that I never agreed to traditional gender roles. We both work full-time, we don't have kids yet, and there's no reason why household tasks should fall entirely on me. I'm not his mother or his maid, I'm his partner, and I expect him to act like an equal participant in our shared life. The fact that he sees housework as women's work is honestly making me question whether we're compatible long-term. I've tried different approaches to get Marcus more involved. I've made chore charts, I've tried positive reinforcement when he does help. I've tried having calm conversations about fair division of labour. Nothing works. He either ignores the chore chart, does tasks so badly that I have to redo them, or promises to help more and then goes right back to his old habits. Last week I decided to try a different tactic. I stopped doing Marcus's laundry, stopped cooking meals that he would eat, and stopped cleaning up any messes that he made. I only took care of my own stuff and let his responsibilities pile up. Within 3 days, Marcus was out of clean clothes and asking where his laundry was. When I told him he needed to do it himself, he got angry and said I was being petty and childish. Marcus accused me of playing games instead of communicating like an adult. He said marriage is about supporting each other, and my refusal to do his laundry was unsupportive and mean. He completely missed the irony that his refusal to do any housework for the past 2 years might also be unsupportive. He sees my labour as something he's entitled to, but he doesn't see his labour as something I should expect. The situation is affecting our relationship in other ways too. I feel like Marcus's mother instead of his wife. I'm so tired from doing everything that I don't have energy left for intimacy or romance. I feel taken for granted and unappreciated. Marcus complains that I'm always stressed and nagging him about housework, but he doesn't connect his lack of contribution to my stress levels. I love Marcus, but I'm starting to feel like I'm married to a teenager instead of a grown man. The idea of having kids with someone who can't even put his own dishes in the dishwasher is terrifying. How can I trust him to be an equal partner in parenting when he won't even be an equal partner in basic household maintenance? I'm worried that if we have children, I'll end up doing all the childcare on top of all the housework, while he continues to act like his only responsibility is his job. Some of our friends think I should just accept that men and women have different strengths, and that maybe household management is just my thing. Others think Marcus is being completely unreasonable, and that I should give him an ultimatum about changing. Or I should consider whether this marriage is sustainable. I honestly don't know what to do anymore. This story perfectly captures the frustration of weaponized incompetence and how exhausting it is to be in a partnership with someone who acts like a dependent instead of an equal. Marcus is essentially forcing his wife to be his mother while claiming its traditional gender roles. The fact that he couldn't even step up when she was sick with the flu shows exactly where his priorities lie. This respect and shared responsibility. No isn't about different strengths. It's about basic one should have to parent their spouse into being a functional adult. Moving into our next story, which deals with financial betrayal that's shaking the foundation of a marriage. My wife spends all our money without telling me. I've been married to my wife for 6 years, and up until recently, I thought we had a solid partnership built on trust and communication. But I just discovered something that's making me question everything about our relationship and whether I can trust her with our future. Sarah and I have always kept our finances mostly separate. We each contribute to a joint account for shared expenses like rent, utilities, and groceries, but we maintain our own checking and savings accounts for personal spending. This system worked well for us because we both like having some financial independence, and it prevented arguments about small purchases. I trusted Sarah to be responsible with her money, just like she trusted me with mine. About 3 months ago, I started noticing that Sarah seemed stressed about money. She'd make comments about things being expensive, or she'd suggest we eat at home more often instead of going out to dinner. I assumed she was just being budget conscious, which I actually appreciated since we've been trying to save up for a down payment on a house. I even started cutting back on my own spending to help us reach our savings goals faster. Last month, Sarah asked if I could cover her portion of our joint expenses for a couple weeks because her paycheck was delayed. She works as a freelance graphic designer, so irregular payment schedules aren't unusual for her. I didn't think twice about covering her share of rent and utilities. I figured she'd pay me back once her client payments came through, and it wasn't a big deal to help out temporarily. But then Sarah asked me to cover her expenses again the following month, and again the month after that. She kept saying her clients were slow to pay and that she was waiting for several large invoices to be processed. I started getting concerned about her cash flow situation and suggested that maybe she should look into getting a part-time job with steady income to supplement her freelance work. Sarah got defensive and insisted her business was just going through a rough patch and that things would improve soon. The truth came out completely by accident. Sarah left her laptop open on our kitchen table while she went to take a shower, and I saw she had multiple browser tabs open for credit card websites. I wasn't trying to snoop, but I could see partial account balances in the tab previews, and the numbers looked really high. Way higher than they should be for someone who was struggling to pay basic expenses. I felt terrible about looking, but my curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on one of the tabs and saw that Sarah had a credit card with a balance of over $15,000. I clicked on another tab and saw a different card with a balance of nearly $10,000. My stomach completely dropped. I had no idea Sarah had this much debt, and I definitely didn't know she was actively using credit cards while telling me she couldn't afford her share of our household expenses. When Sarah got out of the shower, I confronted her about what I'd seen. At first, she tried to deny it and said I had no right to look at her personal financial information. But when I told her exactly what I'd seen, she broke down crying and admitted she'd been hiding her spending and debt from me for over a year. The full story was even worse than I'd imagined. Sarah had been using credit cards to fund a lifestyle we couldn't afford. She'd been buying expensive clothes, getting regular spa treatments, taking solo weekend trips, and eating at expensive restaurants during her work lunches. She'd also been buying gifts for friends and family members, always putting everything on credit cards and telling herself she'd pay it off when her business picked up. The total debt was over $30,000 across 4 different credit cards. Sarah had been making minimum payments for months, but the balances kept growing because of interest charges and her continued spending. She'd reached the credit limits on most of the cards, which is why she'd started asking me to cover her portion of our shared expenses. She'd been using my money to pay for necessities so she could continue using credit cards for everything else. What made it even worse was that Sarah had been lying to me about her income. She'd been telling me her freelance business was struggling, but her bank statement showed she'd actually been making decent money. The problem was that every dollar she earned was going toward minimum credit card payments and new spending. She hadn't been saving anything or budgeting responsibly at all. I felt completely betrayed. Not only had Sarah been lying to me about our financial situation, but she'd been using my money to enable her irresponsible spending habits. While I was cutting back on my own expenses and trying to save for our future, she was racking up debt and living beyond our means. The fact that she'd hidden this from me for over a year made me question what else she might be lying about. When I asked Sarah why she hadn't told me about the debt, she said she was ashamed and embarrassed and kept thinking she could get it under control before I found out. She said she didn't want me to think she was irresponsible with money, so she'd been trying to handle it on her own. She claimed she'd been planning to tell me once she figured out a repayment plan, but the debt had gotten so overwhelming that she didn't know how to bring it up. Sarah begged me to help her deal with the debt and promised she would change her spending habits. She said she'd cut up all her credit cards and stick to a strict budget if I would help her pay off the balances. She suggested we could use some of our house down payment savings to eliminate the highest interest debt and then work together to pay off the rest over time. I told Sarah I needed time to process everything and think about how to move forward. The amount of debt is staggering, but what's even more concerning is the pattern of lying and financial irresponsibility. How can I trust her with our money going forward when she's proven she's willing to lie to me for over a year about something this significant? The debt itself is manageable if we work together, but it would completely derail our plans to buy a house. It would also mean I'd be unfair since financially responsible for Sarah's irresponsible choices, which feels I've been budgeting and saving responsibly while she was secretly spending money we don't have. Some friends think I should help Sarah pay off the debt because we're married and her financial problems are now my financial problems. Others think Sarah needs to face the consequences of her choices on her own and that bailing her out would just enable future irresponsible behaviour. I'm torn between wanting to support my wife and feeling like I've been taken advantage of. The breach of trust feels almost as significant as the debt itself. Sarah looked me in the eye for months while asking me to cover her expenses, knowing she was lying about why she needed help. She watched me cut back on my own spending to help us save money, while she was secretly spending thousands of dollars we didn't have. I don't know how to rebuild trust after such an elaborate deception. Financial infidelity is relationship poison, and this story shows exactly why. Sarah didn't just hide debt, she actively manipulated her husband into subsidizing her secret spending spree while he was cutting back to save for their future. The elaborate lies about delayed payments and struggling business income show calculated deception, not just embarrassment about overspending. $30,000 in secret debt isn't an accident or a rough patch. It's a complete betrayal of partnership and shared goals. The fact that she watched him sacrifice for their future while she was burning money behind his back makes this so much worse than just hidden debt. Let's move into our next story, about someone whose privacy is being violated in the most public way possible. My girlfriend won't stop posting our fights on TikTok. I'm 25 and I've been dating my girlfriend Sarah for about 10 months. She's really into social media and has built up a decent following on TikTok and Instagram over the past couple years. I've always been supportive of her content creation because I know it's important to her and she's genuinely good at it. But recently, she started including our relationship drama in her content, and it's making me incredibly uncomfortable. It started small at first. Sarah would post little videos about relationship stuff in general, like when your boyfriend doesn't text back for 3 hours, or POV, he leaves dishes in the sink. I didn't mind those because they were relatable content that lots of couples could identify with, and she wasn't sharing specific details about our personal business. But about 3 months ago, Sarah started recording herself during or right after our actual arguments. The first time it happened, we'd had a disagreement about me staying out late with friends, without letting her know where I was. It was a valid concern on her part, and we talked it through and resolved it. But the next day, I saw she'd posted a TikTok titled, "When Your Boyfriend Thinks He Doesn't Need to Check In," with her crying and talking about feeling disrespected and worried. I was mortified. She'd shared intimate details about our fight with thousands of strangers on the internet. When I confronted her about it, she said she was just processing her feelings and that lots of her followers found her relationship content helpful. She claimed it wasn't about me specifically, but about the broader experience of dating someone who doesn't communicate well. But anyone who knew us would obviously know she was talking about our fight. Since then, it's gotten progressively worse. Every disagreement we have ends up as content on her social media. If I forget to take out the trash, there's a video about partners who don't pull their weight with household chores. If I want to spend Saturday playing video games instead of going out, there's a video about boyfriends who prioritize gaming over quality time. If we have any kind of miscommunication or conflict, I can guarantee it'll be on TikTok within hours. The most humiliating incident happened 2 weeks ago when we had a fight about money. I had bought a new pair of running shoes without mentioning it to her first, and she was upset because we had been trying to stick to a budget. It turned into a bigger argument about financial communication and spending priorities. We both said things we didn't mean, voices were raised, and it was definitely not our finest moment as a couple. But while we were literally still in the middle of arguing, Sarah grabbed her phone and started recording herself crying and talking about how her boyfriend makes financial decisions without considering her feelings. She was filming herself having a breakdown while I was standing right there trying to have a serious conversation with her about our relationship. It was like she cared more about getting content than actually resolving our problem. The video blew up and got over 100,000 views. The comments were brutal. People were calling me selfish and immature, saying Sarah deserved better, telling her to dump me. Some people were even trying to figure out who I was based on details she'd shared in previous videos. I felt completely exposed and humiliated, like our entire relationship was being judged by strangers on the internet. When I told Sarah how violated I felt by her posting our fight, she said I was being controlling and trying to limit her self-expression. She said her TikTok account was her creative outlet and her way of connecting with other people going through similar relationship struggles. She claimed that sharing her experiences was helping other women feel less alone in their relationships, and that I should be proud to be part of something that was making a positive impact. But it doesn't feel positive to me. It feels like every private moment in our relationship is potential content for her social media. I can't have a bad day or disagree with her about anything without worrying that it'll end up online for everyone to see and judge. It's making me feel like I have to be perfect all the time, because any mistake or conflict will be broadcast to her thousands of followers. Sarah says I'm being dramatic and that she never uses my name or shows my face in the videos. She thinks that gives her the right to share whatever she wants about our relationship, because technically she's maintaining my anonymity, but our friends and family all know who she's talking about when she posts these videos. My co-workers have started making jokes about things they've seen on her TikTok. My mum called me last week, asking if everything was okay in my relationship because she'd seen Sarah's videos. The worst part is that Sarah only posts about the negative stuff. She never makes videos about the good times we have or the sweet things I do for her. Her entire social media presence makes it seem like I'm this terrible boyfriend who's constantly disappointing her. Her followers only see one side of our relationship, the side where I'm always the problem and she's always the victim. I've asked Sarah to stop posting about our personal business, but she refuses. She says her relationship content gets the most engagement and that she's built her following around being authentic about her dating experiences. She's worried that if she stops sharing relationship drama, her views will drop and she'll lose followers. She says I'm asking her to sacrifice her career for my comfort, and that's not fair. But I never signed up to have my relationship broadcasted to the internet. I never agreed to have our fights turned into entertainment for strangers. I feel like Sarah cares more about going viral than she does about my feelings or our privacy as a couple. Every argument we have feels performative now, like she's already thinking about how she'll frame it for her next video. Sarah's started hinting that if I'm not comfortable with her content, maybe we're not compatible long term. She says she needs a partner who supports her creative endeavours and understands that social media is part of her identity. She's made it clear that she's not going to change her posting habits, so I need to either accept it or end the relationship. I love Sarah, but I can't live my life feeling like every private moment might become public content. I don't know how to have a genuine relationship with someone who treats our problems like material for entertainment. The thought of proposing or moving in together feels impossible when I know any future conflicts will just become fodder for her TikTok account. Some of my friends think I should just break up with her because this behaviour is never going to change. Others think I should try to compromise and maybe ask her to run relationship content by me before posting it. But Sarah has made it clear she's not interested in compromise. She sees my discomfort as my problem to deal with, not something that requires any adjustment on her part. That story is absolutely infuriating because Sarah is essentially monetizing their relationship problems while completely disregarding her boyfriend's privacy and dignity. The fact that she was literally filming herself crying during an active argument shows how twisted her priorities have become. No relationship can survive when one person treats every conflict as content creation opportunity. She's choosing engagement metrics over basic respect for her partner. The relationship is already over. She just hasn't realized it yet because she's too busy performing for her followers. Our next story deals with a relationship proposal that's tearing a couple apart in completely different directions. My partner wants an open relationship, I don't. I'm 27 and I've been with my partner Alex for 3 years. We've had what I thought was a really solid, committed relationship. We moved in together last year. We've talked about marriage, and I genuinely believed we were on the same page about building a future together. But 6 months ago, Alex brought up the idea of opening our relationship, and it's been causing constant tension ever since. Alex first mentioned it during a conversation we were having about some friends of ours who are in a polyamorous relationship. I made a comment about how I could never do that, and Alex said they'd actually been thinking about it for a while. They said they loved me and wanted to stay together, but they were curious about exploring connections with other people and thought it might actually strengthen our relationship. I was completely caught off guard. I'd never gotten any indication that Alex was unsatisfied with our relationship or interested in seeing other people. When I asked where this was coming from, Alex said it wasn't about dissatisfaction, but about growth and exploration. They said they didn't want to look back in 20 years and wonder what they'd missed by only being with one person their entire adult life. Alex started sending me articles about ethical non-monogamy and polyamory, trying to educate me about different relationship structures. They said that jealousy was a learned response that could be unlearned with practice and communication. They claimed that opening our relationship would actually make us stronger because we'd be choosing each other every day instead of staying together out of obligation or fear of being alone. The more Alex talked about it, the more anxious and insecure I became. I couldn't understand how they could say they loved me while simultaneously wanting to pursue romantic and physical relationships with other people. To me, commitment means choosing one person and building something exclusive together. The idea of sharing Alex with someone else made me feel sick to my stomach. I told Alex that I wasn't interested in an open relationship and that I needed monogamy to feel secure and valued in a partnership. Alex said they understood my feelings, but hoped I would keep an open mind and maybe consider trying it on a temporary basis, just to see how it felt. They suggested we could start slowly, maybe just with flirting or emotional connections, and see if I could get comfortable with the idea over time. But the more Alex pushed the idea, the more upset I became. I started wondering if they were already interested in someone specific, or if they'd already been unfaithful and were trying to retroactively make it okay. When I asked directly, Alex swore they hadn't cheated and weren't pursuing anyone else. They said the desire for an open relationship was about general curiosity, not about any particular person. Alex started bringing up the topic constantly. They'd share success stories from other open couples, point out attractive people when we were out together and joke about how they'd love to get to know them better, and make comments about how monogamy was an outdated social construct that didn't reflect natural human behaviour. Every conversation felt like pressure to agree to something I fundamentally didn't want. 3 months ago, things escalated when Alex said they'd met someone at work who they had really good chemistry with. They hadn't acted on it, but they said the connection made them realise how much they were missing by limiting themselves to one relationship. They asked again if I'd consider letting them explore things with this co-worker, promising that it wouldn't affect our relationship and might actually help them appreciate me more. I was devastated. It felt like Alex was asking for permission to cheat and using fancy terminology about ethical non-monogamy to make it sound reasonable. I told them that if they wanted to be with other people, they should break up with me first because I wasn't going to sit at home wondering what they were doing with someone else. Alex got frustrated and said I was being closed-minded and that my jealousy was preventing us from growing as a couple. The situation got worse when Alex started spending more time with this co-worker, going to lunch together and texting frequently. When I expressed discomfort, Alex said they were just friends and that I was being controlling by trying to limit their friendships. But I could see the way Alex lit up when they talked about this person, and it was obvious there was more than friendship happening, even if they hadn't crossed physical boundaries yet. Alex suggested we try couples therapy to work through our different views on relationships. I agreed, hoping a therapist could help Alex understand why their request was so hurtful to me. But in therapy, Alex continued to frame the issue as my problem with jealousy and possessiveness, rather than acknowledging that asking for an open relationship was a fundamental change to our agreed-upon relationship structure. The therapist tried to help us find compromise, but there really isn't a middle ground between monogamy and an open relationship. Either Alex gets to see other people, or they don't. Either I have to accept sharing them, or I don't. There's no partial solution that makes both of us happy. Alex has started making comments about feeling trapped and restricted in our relationship. They say they love me, but feel like they're sacrificing a part of themselves by staying monogamous. They've suggested taking a break so they can explore other connections and figure out what they really want. But to me, wanting a break to see other people is just a cowardly way of breaking up without taking responsibility for ending the relationship. Last week, Alex told me they'd been invited to a party by their co-worker and really wanted to go. When I said I'd like to come too, Alex said it would be awkward because their co-worker didn't know about me and they'd been presenting themselves as single. That's when I realised Alex had already been acting single in some contexts, even though we're supposedly still together. I feel like I'm in an impossible situation. If I agree to an open relationship, I'll be miserable and constantly worried about Alex's other connections. If I don't agree, Alex will continue to feel restricted and might end up cheating or leaving anyway. I love Alex and want to make them happy, but I can't change my fundamental need for monogamy any more than they can change their desire for multiple relationships. Alex keeps saying that if I really loved them, I'd want them to be free to explore all aspects of themselves. But I think if they really loved me, they wouldn't want to hurt me by pursuing other people. We're at a complete standstill, and I don't see how this relationship can continue when we want completely different things. Some friends say I should try the open relationship because at least I'd still have Alex in my life, even if I had to share them. Others say Alex is being selfish and manipulative by trying to pressure me into something I'm fundamentally uncomfortable with. I'm torn between trying to be the cool, understanding partner and protecting my own emotional well-being. The worst part is that Alex has framed this whole thing as personal growth and evolution, making me feel like I'm holding them back by wanting traditional monogamy. But I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting an exclusive relationship. I don't think my desire for commitment makes me possessive or jealous or backwards. I just want a partner who chooses me and only me. This relationship dynamic is so manipulative because Alex is essentially trying to have their cake and eat it too, while making their partner feel like the problem. The constant pressure, the articles, the workplace friend they're clearly interested in, the presenting as single at parties. Alex has already checked out of this relationship emotionally and is just trying to get permission to make it official. You can't compromise on fundamental relationship structures, and Alex is being incredibly unfair by framing monogamy as jealousy and possessiveness. This person deserves someone, not someone who sees who actually wants to be with them, exclusively them, as a home base, while they explore other options. Let's move into a story about love, loyalty, and impossible choices. My fiancé hates my dog. I'm 29 and I've been engaged to David for 8 months. We've been together for 2 years total, and things have been really great between us. We're planning our wedding for next spring and talking about buying a house together, but we've hit this major conflict that's making me question everything about our future. The issue is my dog, Buster. He's a 7-year-old golden retriever that I adopted 5 years ago after my previous relationship ended. Buster has been my constant companion through some really difficult times in my life. He was there for me during my dad's cancer battle, through job changes, through depression, through everything. He's not just a pet to me, he's family. When David and I first started dating, he seemed fine with Buster. He'd pet him when he came over, didn't complain about dog hair on the furniture, and even took some cute photos of us all together. I thought David understood how important Buster was to me, and I assumed he was okay with having a dog as part of our future family. But as our relationship got more serious and we started talking about moving in together, David's attitude toward Buster started changing. He began making comments about how much work dogs are, how expensive they are to maintain, and how they limit your freedom to travel and be spontaneous. He'd complain about having to work around Buster's schedule when we made plans, or about not being able to stay out late because I needed to get home to let him out. When we got engaged, I assumed we'd move into a place that was suitable for Buster. Dog-friendly apartment or rental house with a yard where he could run around. But David started talking about luxury apartments downtown that don't allow pets. When I pointed out that we'd need to find somewhere pet-friendly, David said maybe this was a good time to think about whether having a dog still made sense for our lifestyle. I was shocked. I told David that Buster wasn't going anywhere, that he was part of the package when David decided to propose to me. David said he understood I was attached to the dog, but that our relationship should be the priority now, and having a pet would complicate our plans for travelling, having kids eventually, and building the life we wanted together. David started pointing out all the ways Buster was inconvenient. The early morning walks, the vet bills, the pet deposits and restrictions when looking for housing, the inability to be spontaneous about weekend trips. He said he'd tried to accept the dog situation, but he was realising that he didn't want to build a life around a pet's. Things, needs and schedule came to a head last month when we were apartment hunting. We found this amazing place that was perfect for us in every way, except they had a strict no pets policy. David was in love with the apartment and started pressuring me to consider rehoming Buster so we could live there. He said it was just an apartment, we could find other places, but I could tell he'd already made up his mind about what he wanted. When I refused to even consider getting rid of Buster, David got frustrated and said I was being unreasonable. He said we were supposed to be building a life together, and that meant making compromises and putting our relationship first. He couldn't understand why I would choose a dog over our future together. David suggested that maybe I could find Buster a new home, with a family that had kids and a big yard, somewhere he'd be happier and more active. He tried to frame it like I'd be doing what was best for the dog, not just giving him up for convenience, but Buster is perfectly happy with me. He's well trained, healthy, and gets plenty of exercise and attention. The only problem is that my fiancé doesn't want him around. The ultimatum came 2 weeks ago. David sat me down and said he'd been thinking about our situation, and he couldn't move forward with wedding planning while the dog issue was unresolved. He said he loved me and wanted to marry me, but he couldn't commit to a life that revolved around pet ownership. He gave me a choice: rehome Buster and move forward with our wedding plans, or keep the dog and call off the engagement. I was devastated. I couldn't believe David was making me choose between him and Buster. I told him it wasn't fair to spring this on me after we'd already gotten engaged, after I'd assumed he understood that Buster was part of my life permanently. David said he'd tried to make the dog situation work, but he'd realised he just wasn't a pet person and couldn't pretend to be anymore. David's been giving me space to make my decision, but he's made it clear that this isn't negotiable for him. He won't marry me if Buster is still in the picture. He says it's not that he hates the dog personally, he just doesn't want the lifestyle that comes with pet ownership. He wants to be able to travel spontaneously, live in nice apartments without pet restrictions, and focus on building our careers and eventually having children without the added responsibility of a dog. I've been agonising over this decision for weeks. Part of me understands David's perspective. Dogs are a lot of work and responsibility. They do limit your housing options and make travel more complicated. If David genuinely doesn't want to be a pet owner, maybe it's better to figure that out now rather than after we're married and he's miserable. But another part of me feels like David is asking me to abandon a family member. Buster isn't just some inconvenience I picked up randomly. He's been my loyal companion for 5 years. He depends on me completely. The idea of giving him to strangers just because my fiancé finds him inconvenient feels cruel and wrong. I also can't help but wonder what this says about David's character. If he can ask me to get rid of something I love just because it's not convenient for him, what else will he ask me to sacrifice for our relationship? Will he expect me to give up friendships he doesn't like, hobbies that take time away from him, career opportunities that don't fit his vision of our life together? My friends are split on this issue. Some think David is being reasonable and that marriage requires compromises, and that maybe finding Buster a good home would be the mature thing to do. Others think David should have been upfront about his feelings about pets before proposing, and that asking me to choose between him and my dog is manipulative and unfair. Buster has no idea what's happening, which makes this even harder. He still greets David enthusiastically when he comes over, still tries to cuddle with him on the couch. He trusts both of us completely and has no idea that one of us wants him gone. The thought of betraying that trust by giving him away makes me feel sick. David keeps asking when I'm going to make my decision. He says we can't move forward with wedding planning or apartment hunting until this is resolved. He's been looking at apartments on his own and sending me listings for places with no pet policies, like he's trying to show me all the great options we'd have if I'd just get rid of the dog. Yesterday, David said he'd found the perfect apartment and put down a deposit to hold it, but the lease needs to be signed by next week. He said this was my last chance to decide what was more important to me, our future together or a dog that would probably be happier with a different family anyway. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between two different types of love. My love for David is romantic and about building a future together. My love for Buster is loyal and about honouring a commitment I made to care for him. I don't understand why I have to choose between them, why David can't just accept that Buster is part of who I am. The whole situation is making me question whether David and I are really compatible long term. If he can't accept something this important to me, what other fundamental differences are we going to discover after we're married? And if I give up Buster for David, will I end up resenting him for forcing me to make that choice? This story hits right in the heart because it's really about more than just a dog. David waited until after proposing to reveal this deal breaker, which feels fact that he's putting calculated and unfair. The down deposits and setting ultimatums shows he's not interested in finding solutions, just getting his way. Anyone who truly loves you wouldn't ask you to abandon a family member for their convenience. Buster has been loyal and devoted for 5 years, while David can't even handle sharing attention for 2. This ultimatum reveals exactly who David is as a person, and it's not someone who should be getting married. Our next story explores how career opportunities can expose the true priorities in relationships. My boyfriend doesn't want me to take a job offer abroad. I'm 26 and I've been dating my boyfriend Marcus for 2 years. I thought we had a really supportive, encouraging relationship where we both wanted the best for each other's careers and personal growth. But I recently got an incredible job opportunity that's causing major problems between us. And I'm starting to see a side of Marcus I didn't know existed. I work in international development, specifically focusing on clean water projects in developing countries. It's been my passion since college, and I've been working toward getting experience with larger organizations that do work overseas. Last month, I got offered a position with a major humanitarian organization to lead a water infrastructure project in Kenya for 18 months. It's exactly the kind of work I've dreamed of doing, and it would be a huge boost to my career. The position pays well, comes with housing and transportation provided, and would give me the kind of hands-on international experience that's essential for advancing in my field. I would be working with local communities to design and implement sustainable water systems, training local technicians, and helping establish long-term maintenance programs. It's meaningful work that could genuinely improve people's lives while giving me the experience I need to eventually run my own projects. When I first told Marcus about the opportunity, I expected him to be excited for me. He knows how important this kind of work is to me and how hard I've been working to get this type of position. But his reaction was completely different from what I expected. Instead of congratulating me or asking about the details of the job, his first question was whether I had turned it down already. When I told him I was seriously considering accepting the offer, Marcus got upset and said he couldn't believe I was thinking about moving to Africa for a year and a half without discussing it with him first. He said we were in a committed relationship and that major life decisions should be made together, not individually. He felt like I was prioritizing my career over our relationship and our future together. I tried to explain that this wasn't about choosing between him and my career, but about taking advantage of an opportunity that might not come again. I told him I'd been hoping we could figure out a way to make long-distance work, maybe with visits back and forth and constant communication through video calls and messaging. I said 18 months wasn't forever, and that I'd come back with valuable experience that would benefit both my career and our future together. But Marcus wasn't interested in discussing long-distance options. He said he'd seen too many relationships fall apart when couples tried to maintain them across continents, and he wasn't willing to put our relationship through that kind of stress and uncertainty. He said if I really loved him and saw a future with us, I would turn down the job and find opportunities that didn't require me to leave the country. Marcus started pointing out all the reasons why taking the job would be a mistake. He said living in Kenya would be dangerous and that I'd be putting myself at risk for diseases and political instability. He said the living conditions would be difficult and that I'd end up miserable and wanting to come home early. He claimed that international development work was mostly ineffective anyway, and that I'd have more impact working for organisations here at home. When I pushed back on his concerns, Marcus got more direct about his real feelings. He said he'd been planning to propose to me sometime in the next year, and that my acceptance of this job would derail those plans completely. He said he couldn't propose to someone who was about to leave the country, and he couldn't wait around for a year and a half, wondering if I'd decide to extend my contract or take another international position after this one. The proposal revelation caught me completely off guard. We talked about marriage in general terms, but I had no idea Marcus was actively planning to propose. Part of me was touched that he was thinking about our future together, but another part of me was frustrated that he was using the possibility of engagement as leverage to try to get me to turn down this job opportunity. Marcus said that if I took the Kenya position, he'd consider it a sign that I wasn't ready to settle down and build a life with him. He said long-distance relationships never work, especially across such different time zones and with such limited communication infrastructure. He pointed out that I'd miss important events like holidays, birthdays, and family gatherings, and that our relationship would essentially be on hold for 18 months. I asked Marcus if he'd consider visiting me in Kenya, maybe taking vacation time to see the work I was doing and experience that part of the world together. He immediately shot down the idea, saying he had no interest in travelling to Africa and that his job wouldn't allow for extended international travel anyway. He said it was unrealistic to expect him to use his vacation time and money to visit me when I was the one choosing to leave. The conversation escalated when Marcus suggested that my desire to take this job showed I wasn't as committed to our relationship as he thought. He said women who were serious about settling down and starting families didn't run off to foreign countries to chase career adventures. He implied that I was being selfish and immature by prioritizing professional goals over building a stable life with him. That comment really stung because it felt like Marcus was dismissing everything I'd worked toward in my career as some kind of frivolous adventure. This job isn't about running away or avoiding commitment. It's about doing meaningful work that I'm passionate about and gaining experience that will make me better at what I do. The fact that he saw it as incompatible with being a serious partner made me question whether he really understood or supported my professional goals. Marcus started bringing up couples we both knew who'd tried long distance and ended up breaking up. He said the time difference would make regular communication impossible, that I'd be too busy with work to maintain our relationship properly, and that we'd both end up meeting other people and growing apart. He painted this picture of inevitable relationship failure if I took the job. When I pointed out that plenty of couples survive temporary separations for career opportunities, Marcus said those situations were different because they usually involved shorter time periods or better communication infrastructure. He said 18 months in rural Kenya wasn't the same as 6 months in London or Tokyo. He seemed determined to convince me that this specific opportunity was uniquely relationship destroying. The pressure from Marcus has been relentless over the past few weeks. He's been sending me job listings for positions here in the United States, trying to show me alternatives that wouldn't require international travel. He's been talking about apartments we could move into together and trips we could take domestically instead of me going to Kenya. He's been painting this picture of the life we could build if I'd just stay here and focus on our relationship. But every conversation about the job ends with Marcus getting frustrated and saying I'm choosing my career over him. He's made it clear that if I accept the position in Kenya, he won't be here when I get back. He says he's not going to put his own life on hold for 18 months, waiting for someone who might decide she likes international work better than domestic life. Marcus has also started questioning whether I'm really cut out for the kind of work I want to do. He says international development is a young person's game, and that eventually I'll want to settle down and have kids, which would be impossible if I'm constantly traveling to different countries for work projects. He's suggesting that maybe I should focus on finding opportunities that would allow for a more stable, traditional lifestyle. The deadline for accepting the Kenya position is next week, and I feel completely torn. Part of me knows this is an incredible opportunity that I might never get again. It's exactly the kind of work I went to school for, and the experience would open doors for future positions with major international organisations. But another part of me is terrified of losing Marcus and the relationship we've built over the past 2 years. I keep wondering if Marcus is right about long distance being impossible to maintain. Maybe I am being naive about the challenges of trying to keep a relationship alive across continents with limited communication. Maybe choosing career over relationship at this stage of my life is a mistake I'll regret later. But I also can't shake the feeling that if Marcus really loved and supported me, he'd be encouraging me to take this opportunity instead of trying to talk me out of it. The fact that he's not even willing to consider trying long distance feels like he's giving up on us without even attempting to make it work. Some of my friends think Marcus is being selfish and controlling by trying to limit my career opportunities for his own comfort. Others think he's being practical about the realities of long-distance relationships and that I should consider whether this job is worth risking a good relationship. I'm getting advice from all directions, but ultimately, I have to make this decision myself. The worst part is that I feel like I'm being forced to choose between two things I want: meaningful work that I'm passionate about and a relationship with someone I love. I don't understand why I can't have both, why Marcus can't support my career goals even when they're inconvenient for him personally. Yesterday, Marcus said he needed to know my decision by this weekend because he can't keep living in this uncertainty. He said if I'm going to Kenya, he needs to start preparing himself emotionally for our relationship to end. The way he's talking about it makes it sound like the relationship is already over in his mind, like he's just waiting for me to make it official by accepting the job. This situation is revealing so much about Marcus's character and what he really thinks about women's careers. His refusal to even consider long distance, combined with his comments about women who are serious about settling down, not chasing career opportunities abroad, show some deeply problematic views about gender roles and priorities. The fact that he's using the possibility of a proposal as manipulation rather than support is a massive red flag. Someone who truly loves you wants to see you succeed and grow, not stay small for their comfort. Our next story takes us into the modern battleground of gaming and relationships, where screen time becomes a relationship destroyer. My girlfriend gets mad when I game with friends. I'm 24 and I've been dating my girlfriend Ashley for about a year and a half. She's great in a lot of ways, but we keep having the same fight over and over again about my gaming habits, and it's starting to really affect our relationship. I don't think I'm being unreasonable, but Ashley acts like my gaming is this huge problem that's ruining everything between us. I've been gaming since I was a kid, and it's always been one of my main hobbies. I play mostly online games with a group of friends I've known since high school. We have a regular schedule where we get online together most evenings around 8 and play for 2 to 3 hours. It's how we stay connected since we all live in different cities now, and it's my main way of relaxing and unwinding after work. When Ashley and I first started dating, I was upfront about my gaming hobby. I told her I played regularly with friends and that it was important to me. She seemed fine with it at first, even thought it was cute that I had such a close group of long-distance friends. She'd sometimes sit next to me while I played and watch, or she'd do her own thing like reading or watching Netflix while I was gaming. But over the past 6 months, Ashley's attitude toward my gaming has completely changed. She started making comments about how much time I spend playing, how I'm more excited to talk to my gaming friends than I am to talk to her, and how she feels like she's competing with a video game for my attention. She says my gaming schedule is interfering with our relationship and preventing us from spending quality time together. The thing is, I don't think I'm gaming excessively. I play maybe 12 to 15 hours per week, usually in the evenings after we've had dinner and spent time together. I don't game during our date nights or when we have plans to do something together. I don't ignore her when she wants to talk or needs something. I'm always willing to pause or quit early if something important comes up. But Ashley acts like any gaming at all is too much. Ashley started asking me to skip gaming nights to hang out with her instead, even when we didn't have specific plans. She'd suggest watching a movie or just cuddling on the couch, and when I'd say I'd already committed to playing with my friends, she'd get upset and say I was choosing a game over her. She started framing every gaming session as me rejecting her in favour of something else. The fights escalated when Ashley began interrupting my gaming sessions. She'd come into the room while I was wearing headphones talking to my friends and ask me random questions that could easily wait until later. She'd bring me snacks or drinks I didn't ask for, and then get upset when I didn't pause immediately to thank her properly. She'd start conversations about her day right in the middle of intense gameplay moments. When I asked Ashley to please wait until I was done gaming to discuss non-urgent things, she said I was prioritising my friends over her and that she felt ignored and unimportant in our relationship. She said she shouldn't have to schedule time around my gaming just to talk to her own boyfriend. She claimed that my unwillingness to drop everything for her showed that I didn't really care about her feelings. Things got worse when Ashley started planning activities during my regular gaming times without asking me first. She'd invite her friends over or suggest going out to dinner right when she knew I was supposed to be online with my friends. When I'd remind her about my gaming schedule, she'd say that spontaneous plans should take priority over sitting in front of a computer, and that a good boyfriend would be flexible about his hobbies. Ashley also started making disparaging comments about gaming in general. She'd say things like, "It's just a game," or "Your friends will understand if you miss one night," or "You're 24, maybe it's time to find more mature hobbies." She'd compare my gaming to addiction and suggest that I had an unhealthy attachment to my computer. She'd point out other couples where the guy didn't game and talk about how much more time they seemed to spend together. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago when I had plans for a special gaming event with my friends. We'd been planning this particular session for weeks because it was a rare opportunity to do this challenging content together, and we'd all scheduled our evening around it. But right before I was supposed to log on, Ashley announced that her sister was having a crisis and needed us to come over immediately to provide emotional support. I asked if it was truly an emergency or if it could wait a couple hours until after my gaming session. Ashley exploded and said she couldn't believe I was questioning whether her sister's emotional crisis was important enough to interrupt my precious game time. She said any decent boyfriend would drop everything to support his girlfriend's family, and that my gaming friends weren't more important than real-life relationships. When I suggested that maybe Ashley could go support her sister while I finished my gaming commitment and then join them afterward, Ashley said that showed exactly where my priorities were. She said I was choosing virtual adventures over being there for her family during a difficult time. She made it sound like I was being completely heartless and selfish. I ended up skipping the gaming session to go with Ashley to her sister's place. But when we got there, the crisis turned out to be that her sister was upset about a fight with her boyfriend. It was definitely not an emergency that required both of us to drop everything and rush over. Ashley's sister seemed surprised that we'd both come and said she would have been fine waiting until the next day to talk. I felt manipulated and used. Since then, Ashley has been escalating her demands about my gaming time. She says that if I really loved her and wanted our relationship to work long term, I'd be willing to significantly reduce my gaming or give it up entirely. She claims that spending 15 hours a week on a hobby is excessive for someone in a serious relationship, and that I should want to spend that time with her instead. Ashley has started timing how long I play and getting upset if I go even a few minutes over my usual session length. She's made comments about how my friends are probably annoyed that I always have to check with my girlfriend before committing to longer gaming sessions. She's suggested that my gaming is preventing us from developing deeper intimacy and that I'm using it to avoid dealing with relationship issues. The most frustrating part is that Ashley has her own hobbies that take up just as much time as my gaming. She does yoga 3 times a week, has book club twice a month, goes out with her girlfriends regularly, and spends hours scrolling social media and watching reality TV shows I have no interest in. But somehow my hobby is the one that's problematic and interfering with our relationship. When I point out this double standard, Ashley says her activities are different because they don't involve talking to other people online, and they don't require rigid scheduling. She claims that gaming is antisocial and that my friends and I are too old to be spending so much time playing video games. She says her hobbies are more mature and don't interfere with our relationship the way gaming does. Ashley has started making ultimatums about my gaming schedule. She says she needs me to cut back to no more than 5 hours per week if I want our relationship to continue. She's also demanded that I not make any gaming commitments without clearing them with her first, and that I be willing to cancel them if she needs me for something. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own home. I can't enjoy my hobby without constant guilt trips and arguments. Ashley has made it clear that she sees my gaming as a character flaw and something I need to fix about myself if I want to be a good boyfriend. But gaming isn't hurting anyone. It's not interfering with my responsibilities, and it's not preventing me from being a good partner to her. My friends have started commenting that I seem stressed during our gaming sessions and that I'm always worried about how long we've been playing. They've noticed that I frequently have to cut sessions short or can't commit to longer gaming events because of Ashley's demands. Some of them have suggested that maybe Ashley isn't the right fit for me if she can't accept something that's been important to me for years. But I love Ashley, and I want our relationship to work. I just don't understand why she can't accept that gaming is part of who I am, and how I maintain friendships with people who matter to me. I feel like she's trying to change fundamental aspects of my personality and interests instead of accepting me as I am. Ashley says that if I'm not willing to compromise on my gaming schedule, it shows that I'm not ready for a mature, committed relationship. She's threatened to move out if I don't agree to her demands about reducing my gaming time. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my hobby and my girlfriend, and I don't understand why both can't coexist in my life. That story is infuriating because Ashley is being incredibly controlling while disguising it as relationship concern. Interrupting gaming sessions, manufacturing emergencies, and demanding someone give up a harmless hobby they've had for years is manipulative behaviour. The double standard about her own time-consuming activities makes it even worse. Gaming isn't the problem here. Ashley's need to control every aspect of her boyfriend's life is. Let's move into our next story about family dynamics that are destroying a marriage from the inside. My husband never stands up to his mother. I'm 31 and I've been married to Ethan for 4 years. I love him deeply, but his relationship with his mother is destroying our marriage, and I don't know how much more I can take. Ethan's mother, Linda, has been involved in every aspect of our relationship since day one. When we were dating, she would call him multiple times a day and expect detailed updates about our plans, where we were going, and what we were doing. If Ethan didn't answer her calls immediately, she would start texting and calling repeatedly until he responded. I thought it was a bit much, but I figured she was just protective and would back off once she got used to me being in his life. But after we got married, Linda's involvement actually increased. She has a key to our house and uses it whenever she wants. I'll come home from work to find her in our kitchen, having let herself in to tidy up or prepare dinner for Ethan. She rearranges our furniture, reorganises our cabinets, and leaves passive-aggressive notes about things she thinks we're doing wrong around the house. Linda constantly criticises me in subtle ways that she can deny if confronted. She'll make comments about how I don't cook as well as she does, how our house isn't as clean as it should be, how I'm not taking good enough care of Ethan. She'll bring over meals because Ethan looks thin, or cleaning supplies because the house needs some attention. Everything is phrased as helpful concern, but it's clearly criticism disguised as caring. The worst part is that Ethan never says anything. When his mother makes these comments or shows up uninvited or rearranges our personal space, he just goes along with it. If I try to address the behaviour directly, Ethan says I'm being too sensitive and that his mother means well. He says she's just trying to help and that I should appreciate having someone who cares so much about our family. Linda also tries to control major decisions in our marriage. When we were house hunting, she insisted on coming to every showing and gave her opinion about every property we looked at. She actually called our realtor behind our backs to express concerns about houses I liked, trying to influence our choices. When we finally bought our house, she was upset that we hadn't chosen the one she preferred and made several comments about how we'd made a mistake. The interference extends to our finances as well. Linda expects Ethan to discuss our budget with her and gets upset if we make purchases she doesn't approve of. She's criticised everything from our car to our furniture to our vacation choices. She acts like she has a right to weigh in on how we spend our money and gets offended when I suggest that our finances are private between Ethan and me. Linda also tries to plan our social calendar around her preferences. She'll make plans for family gatherings or events and simply inform us that we're expected to attend, without asking if we have conflicts or other commitments. If we can't make it to something she's planned, she guilt-trips Ethan about disappointing the family and not prioritising his relationships with his relatives. The most infuriating incidents happen during holidays and special occasions. Linda always wants to host everything at her house and gets upset if we suggest alternating between families or starting our own traditions. Last Christmas, I wanted to have a quiet morning at home before going to family gatherings, but Linda called at 7 in the morning, demanding that we come over immediately to open presents with the family. When Ethan told her we'd be there later, she started crying and saying we were ruining Christmas for everyone. Linda has also started giving me unsolicited advice about when Ethan and I should have children. She brings up grandchildren constantly and makes comments about how she's not getting any younger and wants to be able to enjoy grandchildren while she's still healthy. She's even suggested that we might be having fertility issues and offered to pay for us to see a specialist, even though we haven't been trying to conceive and haven't asked for her input. When I try to set boundaries with Linda, Ethan undermines me by making excuses for her behaviour or suggesting that I'm overreacting. If I ask him to tell his mother not to let herself into our house without permission, he says she's just trying to help and that I should be grateful for her support. If I complain about her criticism, he says she's just concerned and that I'm taking things too personally The breaking point came last month when Linda used her key to let herself into our house while we were both at work. She decided to surprise us by completely redecorating our bedroom. She changed our bedding, moved our furniture around, and even hung different artwork on the walls. When we came home, she was so proud of what she'd done and couldn't understand why I was upset about her going through our personal space without permission. I was furious and told Linda that she needed to return our key and stop letting herself into our house. She started crying and said she was just trying to make our home more beautiful and that she couldn't believe I was so ungrateful for her efforts. Ethan immediately took his mother's side and said I was being cruel and that she'd spent her whole day trying to do something nice for us. The fight that followed was one of the worst we've ever had. I told Ethan that his mother was crossing major boundaries and that his refusal to stand up to her was damaging our marriage. He accused me of being jealous of his relationship with his mother and said I was trying to drive a wedge between them. He said family was important to him and that I should understand that his mother would always be a priority in his life. I tried to explain that I wasn't asking him to choose between me and his mother, but that I needed him to establish healthy boundaries and support me when she overstepped. Ethan said I was being controlling and that I knew his family was close-knit when I married him. He said if I couldn't handle having an involved mother-in-law, maybe I wasn't cut out for being part of his family. Since that fight, Linda has been even more invasive, almost like she knows Ethan won't stop her no matter what she does. She started calling during our date nights and expecting Ethan to talk for long periods of time. She's shown up at my workplace to have lunch and talk about how worried she is about Ethan's stress levels. She's even contacted my mother to discuss our marriage and express concerns about how I'm treating her son. The situation is affecting every aspect of our relationship. I feel like I'm married to both Ethan and his mother, and that Linda has more influence over our life decisions than I do. I can't have a private conversation with my husband without worrying that he'll share the details with his mother. I can't make plans for our home or our future without considering Linda's opinions and reactions. Ethan continues to defend his mother's behaviour and says I'm the one with the problem. He says most wives would be grateful to have such a caring mother-in-law and that my inability to get along with his family is creating unnecessary drama. He's suggested couples therapy, but only if I'm willing to work on accepting his mother's role in our lives rather than trying to change it. I love Ethan, but I'm starting to feel like I'm in a relationship with someone who will never prioritise our marriage over his mother's feelings. The idea of having children with someone who can't establish boundaries with his own family is terrifying. I keep wondering if this dynamic will ever change, or if I'm doomed to spend the rest of my marriage competing with my mother-in-law for my husband's loyalty. Some of my friends think I should give Ethan an ultimatum about setting boundaries with his mother, or I should consider leaving the marriage. Others think I should just accept that some families are closer than others and try to find ways to coexist peacefully with Linda. But I don't think I should have to accept having my personal space invaded and my marriage decisions controlled by someone who isn't part of our actual relationship. Linda has made it clear that she has no intention of backing off, and Ethan has made it clear that he won't ask her to. I feel trapped in a marriage where I'll never be the priority, and where my needs will always come second to maintaining peace with his mother. I don't know how to move forward when my husband refuses to acknowledge that there's even a problem. That's the end of that story. If you're still awake, let me know what you thought about that one. Either than that, let's go to the next one. This next story comes from someone who's dealing with something that honestly sounds exhausting. My girlfriend won't stop comparing me to her ex. Every single argument we have, no matter how small or what it's about, somehow turns into her bringing up her ex-boyfriend. It started maybe 6 months ago, and at first I thought it was just her way of processing the breakup since they were together for 3 years. But now it's gotten to the point where I can't even have a normal disagreement without hearing about how much better he was at handling conflict, or how he would never have said what I just said, or how he was more understanding about whatever we're fighting about. Last week we got into an argument because I forgot to pick up milk on my way home from work. It was completely my fault, I'll admit that. But instead of just being annoyed about the milk, she went off about how her ex always remembered everything and never made her feel like she had to manage the household by herself. Then she started listing all these other ways he was supposedly more considerate than me. The thing is, I know for a fact that this ex treated her terribly. She used to cry to me about how he would ignore her for days, how he cheated on her twice, how he made her feel worthless. She literally left him because she said she couldn't take the emotional abuse anymore. But now suddenly he's this perfect boyfriend who did everything right, and I'm the one who can't measure up. It's not just during arguments either. If I bring her flowers, she mentions how her ex used to bring her specific types of flowers that meant more to him. If I plan a date, she talks about how her ex was more creative with his date ideas. If I try to be affectionate, she compares my approach to his and usually finds mine lacking. I've tried talking to her about it multiple times. I've explained how hurtful it is to constantly be compared to someone else, especially someone who treated her badly. I've asked her if she's still not over him, if she thinks she made a mistake leaving him, if she even wants to be with me. Every time she says she's sorry, that she doesn't mean to do it, and that she loves me and wants to be with me. But then, a few days later, it happens again. The worst part is that it's starting to make me doubt myself. I find myself second-guessing everything I do, wondering if I'm good enough, wondering if she's settling for me because she can't have him back. I've started walking on eggshells around her because I never know what innocent thing I might do that will trigger another comparison to her perfect ex. My friends think I should break up with her, but I really do love her. When she's not bringing him up, we have an amazing relationship. She's funny and smart and beautiful, and we have so much in common. I just don't know how to make her stop living in the past and start appreciating what we have together. I'm starting to think she's not actually over him, and that I'm just a placeholder until she figures out how to get him back. But maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe this is just how some people process past relationships. I honestly don't know what to do anymore. That story's over. Honestly, this guy is being emotionally tortured and doesn't even realise it. Nobody should have to live in the shadow of their partner's ex, especially an ex who was abusive. The fact that she's rewriting history to make her terrible ex seem perfect, while constantly tearing down someone who actually treats her well, is just cruel. This isn't about processing a past relationship. This is about someone who either isn't ready to be in a new one, or is deliberately trying to destroy her current partner's self-esteem. He needs to run before she completely destroys his confidence. Let's move on to our next story, which comes from someone named Kelly, who's dealing with a pattern that would honestly make me question everything. My boyfriend never celebrates my birthday. We've been together for 3 years now, and every single year he either forgets my birthday or just doesn't bother to do anything special for it. I'm not asking for some huge, elaborate celebration or expensive gifts. I would be happy with literally anything that showed he was thinking about me and cared enough to acknowledge the day. The first year we were together, my birthday came about 4 months into our relationship. I had mentioned it a few times in the weeks leading up to it, not in a demanding way, but just in casual conversation like, "Oh, my birthday's coming up next week," or "I'm excited to turn 26. The day came and went without him saying anything. When I brought it up the next day, he seemed genuinely surprised and apologetic. He said he was terrible with dates and promised to do something special to make up for it. We ended up having a nice dinner the following weekend, so I figured it was just new relationship awkwardness. The second year, I was more direct about it. I put it in his phone calendar. I mentioned it multiple times. I even sent him a text the morning of saying, "Guess what day it is?" He texted back, "Happy birthday, babe," and that was it. No card, no gift, no plans. When I got home from work that evening, he was playing video games like it was any other day. I asked if we were going to do anything to celebrate, and he said he hadn't planned anything because he thought I might want to celebrate with my friends instead. I ended up going out with my girlfriends that night, and they were all horrified when I told them my boyfriend hadn't planned anything. They kept asking what was wrong with him and why I was putting up with it. I defended him because I love him, and he's great in so many other ways. But deep down, I was really hurt. This year was the worst yet. I had been dropping hints for weeks. I showed him things online that I liked. I talked about how excited I was for my birthday dinner. I even joked about how I was finally going to get a birthday celebration from my boyfriend. The day of my birthday, I woke up to nothing. No happy birthday, no kiss, no acknowledgement at all. He got up, showered, and left for work like it was any other Tuesday. I spent the entire day waiting for something. A text, a phone call, flowers delivered to my office, anything. By lunchtime, I was checking my phone constantly. By the end of the workday, I was fighting back tears. I got home, and he was already there, making himself dinner and watching TV. I walked in and he said, "Hey babe, how was your day?" Like nothing was different. I completely lost it. I started crying and asked him how he could forget my birthday for the third year in a row. He looked genuinely confused for a moment. Then his face changed and he said, "Oh shit, is that today?" When I said yes, he immediately started apologizing and saying he would make it up to me. He offered to take me out to dinner right then, but I was too upset to go anywhere. The thing that really gets to me is that he never forgets anything else. He remembers every single football game, every work deadline, every time his friends want to hang out. He has an excellent memory for things that matter to him. But somehow my birthday, the one day a year that's specifically about me, just slips his mind every single time. He's been trying to make it up to me all week, bringing me flowers and planning a belated celebration. But I can't shake the feeling that if something's important to you, you don't forget it 3 years in a row. It makes me feel like I'm not important to him, like our relationship isn't a priority in his life. My friends keep telling me to dump him, but I love him, and we're happy together most of the time. I just want to feel like I matter to him, especially on the one day a year that's supposed to be about celebrating me. Is it wrong to expect your partner to remember and acknowledge your birthday? That story is over. 3 years of forgetting isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to care. The fact that he remembers every football game but can't be bothered to put his girlfriend's birthday in his phone shows exactly where his priorities are. This isn't about having a bad memory. This is about someone who doesn't think his girlfriend is worth the minimal effort it takes to acknowledge her existence. One day a year. Kelly deserves someone who doesn't treat her birthday like an inconvenient surprise that happens to him annually. Our next story comes from Marcus, who discovered that his private life isn't so private after all. My wife tells her friends everything about our marriage. I found this out in the most embarrassing way possible last weekend when we were at a barbecue with her friend group. I was talking to one of the husbands when his wife came over and made a comment about how she heard I was still struggling with something very personal that my wife and I had discussed in private just a few days earlier. I was mortified. This was something I had shared with my wife in confidence during a vulnerable moment, and apparently she had immediately turned around and told her entire friend group about it. The look of pity in this woman's eyes made me want to disappear into the ground. When we got home, I confronted my wife about it. At first, she tried to deny it, but when I told her exactly what her friend had said, she got defensive. She said that she needs someone to talk to about our relationship issues, and her friends are her support system. She claimed that everyone talks to their friends about their marriages, and that I was being unreasonable for expecting her to keep everything to herself. But this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Over the past year, I've started noticing little comments and looks from her friends that made me realise they knew way more about our personal life than they should. They know about our arguments, our financial situation, our sex life, even private conversations we've had about starting a family. Last month, one of her friends asked me how I was feeling about the bedroom issues we'd been having. I had no idea what she was talking about until I realised my wife must have told them about a completely private conversation we'd had about our intimacy. I felt violated and embarrassed, But when I brought it up with my wife, she said I was overreacting. The worst part is that it's always the negative stuff she shares. She never tells them about the sweet things I do for her or the good times we have together. It's always our problems, our fights, my insecurities, my mistakes. I feel like her friend group has this completely one-sided view of our marriage, where I'm the bad guy who's constantly causing problems. I've tried explaining to her how this makes me feel, but she doesn't seem to understand why I'm upset. She says that talking to her friends helps her process things, and that I should be glad she has people to support her. But I don't feel supported. I feel betrayed. Every time we have a disagreement or I share something personal with her, I wonder if it's going to become gossip material for her next girls' night. It's gotten to the point where I don't want to be around her friends anymore, because I never know what they've heard about me or what judgment they're passing. I also find myself holding back from being vulnerable with my wife, because I don't trust that what I tell her will stay between us. I love my wife, and I want our marriage to work, but I need to be able to trust that our private moments stay private. I don't think that's too much to ask, but she seems to think I'm being controlling and unreasonable. I'm starting to feel like I'm married to her entire friend group instead of just her. That story's over. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership between two people, not a reality show for your friend group. There's a massive difference between getting support from friends and turning your husband into entertainment for girls' night. The fact that she only shares the negative stuff makes it even worse because she's actively damaging his reputation while violating his trust. Marcus isn't being controlling. He's asking for basic respect and privacy in his own marriage. If she needs that much outside validation and discussion about every aspect of their relationship, maybe she's not ready to be married. Let's dive into our next story, from someone who's noticing a change that's slowly eating away at their self-worth. My partner never compliments me anymore. We've been together for 2.5 years, and I've started to notice something that's making me feel invisible in my own relationship. When we first started dating, he used to tell me I was beautiful all the time. He'd compliment my outfits, tell me how good I smelled, say sweet things about my laugh or how I made him feel. It wasn't over the top or anything, just those little comments that made me feel appreciated and desired. But somewhere along the way, all of that just stopped. I can't even remember the last time he said something nice about how I look or acknowledged any effort I put into my appearance. I'll spend an hour getting ready for a date night, put on makeup, do my hair, wear something I know he used to love on me, and he doesn't say a word. Not even a "you look nice" when I'm clearly dressed up for him. It's not just about physical compliments either. He used to tell me he was proud of me when I accomplished something at work or when I was working toward a goal. He'd comment on my cooking, thank me for little things I did around the apartment, tell me he appreciated how I handled difficult situations. Now it's like I could win the lottery or learn to speak French and he wouldn't even notice. The thing that really bothers me is that I know he's capable of giving compliments because I hear him do it with other people. He'll tell his friends they look good, compliment his co-workers on their presentations, even tell the waitress her recommendation was perfect. But when it comes to me, it's like he's forgotten how to say anything positive. I've tried dropping hints, like asking him how I look before we go out, or mentioning when I've worked hard on something. He'll usually just give me a distracted fine or good without even really looking at me. It makes me feel like he's either completely indifferent to me or actively trying to make me feel bad about myself. Last week I decided to test this theory. I didn't wear any makeup, threw my hair in a messy bun, and wore old sweatpants around the house all day. His reaction was exactly the same as when I spend time getting ready to look nice for him. No difference whatsoever. It's like he stopped seeing me entirely. I've tried bringing this up with him a couple of times, but he gets defensive and says he shouldn't have to constantly tell me I'm pretty, because I should already know how he feels. He says actions matter more than words, and that he shows me he loves me in other ways. But honestly, I can't think of what those other ways are supposed to be. The worst part is that it's starting to affect how I feel about myself. I find myself looking in the mirror, wondering if I've gotten less attractive, if I've let myself go without realizing it, if there's something wrong with me that's making him lose interest. I've started putting less effort into my appearance because what's the point if he's not going to notice anyway? I miss feeling desired by the person I'm with. I miss feeling like he thinks I'm beautiful or that he's lucky to be with me. Instead, I feel like I'm just furniture in his life, something that's always there that he doesn't really think about anymore. I don't need constant validation, but I need something. Some sign that he still finds me attractive and worth celebrating. I love him and I want this relationship to work, but I'm starting to feel like maybe he's just not that into me anymore and he's too comfortable to do anything about it. I don't know how to bring back something that feels like it's already died. That story's over. When someone stops seeing you, it's usually because they've stopped choosing to look. The fact that he can compliment strangers but acts like his girlfriend is invisible shows this isn't about his personality. It's about taking her for granted. She's not asking to be worshipped, just acknowledged as a human being he supposedly loves. This kind of emotional neglect can destroy someone's self-worth faster than most people realize. Our next story comes from Sarah, who found out about a trip in the worst possible way. My husband took a secret vacation. I found out completely by accident when I was looking through our credit card statement to check on some charges. There was a hotel booking in Miami for 3 nights that I'd never heard about, along with restaurant charges and what looks like activity fees. The dates were from 2 weeks ago when he told me he was working overtime all weekend. At first, I thought it might be some kind of mistake or identity theft, so I called the credit card company. They confirmed that all the charges were legitimate and had been made with his card. That's when I started putting together some things that hadn't made sense at the time. 2 weeks ago, he told me he had to work all weekend on some big project that was behind schedule. He left Friday night saying he'd probably have to stay late at the office and might even sleep there to get everything done. He came home Sunday evening looking relaxed and saying the project had gone well, but he was exhausted from all the work. I remember thinking he looked pretty good for someone who had supposedly been working non-stop for 3 days, but I didn't question it. I was actually proud of him for being so dedicated to his job and told him he deserved to relax after working so hard. Now I feel like an idiot for believing him. When I confronted him about the charges, he got this deer-in-headlights look and tried to deny it at first. He said maybe someone had stolen his card information, but when I pointed out that he would have reported that immediately, he finally admitted the truth. He said he had gone to Miami with 3 of his college friends for a guy's weekend. Apparently, they had planned it months ago, but he never mentioned it to me because he knew I would be upset about him spending money on a vacation when we're trying to save for a house down payment. He said it was a last-minute decision and he didn't want to deal with me being angry about it. What really hurts is not just that he lied, but that he made me feel bad for him while he was actually having fun without me. I spent that whole weekend feeling sorry for him having to work so hard, making his favourite dinner for when he got home and planning a nice evening to help him unwind from his stressful weekend. The lying is bad enough, but there are so many other things about this that bother me. He had no problem spending $800 on himself while telling me we need to cut back on expenses. He was comfortable letting me worry about him working too hard while he was posting pictures on social media with his friends. Most importantly, he didn't even think to invite me or suggest we plan a trip together. When I asked him why he couldn't have just told me about the trip, he said he knew I would either want to come along and ruin the guy's weekend, or I would guilt trip him about the money and make him cancel. He said sometimes he needs time with his friends, without having to consider my feelings about everything. I told him that I understand wanting time with friends, but lying about it and making me worry about him is completely different from just asking for a guy's weekend. If he had been honest, we could have talked about the budget and figured out how to make it work, or I could have planned something fun for myself while he was gone. He's been apologetic since then and says he realises he handled it wrong. He promised he won't lie about trips anymore and said he'll be more transparent about spending. But I keep thinking about how easily the lies came to him, how detailed his fake story about working was, and how comfortable he seemed letting me believe something completely false. It makes me wonder what else he's been lying about, and whether I can trust anything he tells me about where he goes or what he's doing. If he can lie this convincingly about a weekend trip, what else might he be hiding from me? That story's over. The betrayal here goes so much deeper than just taking a trip. He created an elaborate lie, let her worry about him, accepted her sympathy, and spent their savings, all while she had no idea. The fact that he assumed she would ruin a guy's weekend shows he doesn't respect her enough to even have an honest conversation. This isn't about needing friend time. It's about someone who thinks marriage means finding creative ways to deceive your spouse. Let's move to our next story from someone dealing with a living situation that's causing major relationship problems. My girlfriend refuses to move out of her parents' house. We've been together for almost 2 years, and she's 26 years old, but she absolutely will not consider getting her own place or moving in together. Every time I bring up the idea of us having our own space, she shuts down the conversation by saying she's not moving out until she's married. At first, I thought this was just a cultural or religious thing that I needed to respect. Her family is pretty traditional, and I know some people prefer to live at home until marriage. But the more I think about it, the more problems this is creating for our relationship, and I'm starting to feel like she's using it as an excuse to avoid taking our relationship to the next level. The practical issues are obvious. We have zero privacy. Every time I come over, her parents are there, which means we can't have any kind of intimate moments without feeling like teenagers sneaking around. We can't have serious conversations about our future without her mum walking in to offer us snacks, or her dad asking about my job for the 100th time. If we want to spend the night together, I have to get a hotel room, which gets expensive fast. She won't stay at my apartment overnight because she says her parents would be upset. So our relationship exists in this weird bubble where we're adults in public, but have to follow her parents' rules whenever we're at her house. But the real issue is that she makes good money at her job and could easily afford her own place. She's not staying home to save money or help her family financially. She just doesn't want to deal with the responsibilities of living independently. Her mum still does her laundry, cooks all her meals, and basically treats her like she's still in high school. When I suggested that maybe she could get her own apartment just to experience independence before we potentially move in together, she got defensive and said I was trying to rush her into something she wasn't ready for. She said, if I really loved her, I would understand that family is important to her and I should respect her decision to stay close to them. The thing is, I do respect her family and I want to have a good relationship with them. But I also want to have a relationship with her that feels like it's between two adults, not something that has to be approved by her parents. I want us to be able to make decisions together, have our own space and build something that's ours. Last month I brought up the possibility of us getting engaged soon, since she says she won't move out until marriage. Her response was that she's not ready to get engaged yet because we haven't been together long enough and she wants to make sure we're compatible. But how are we supposed to figure out if we're compatible when we can't even live like adults together? It feels like she wants all the benefits of being in a relationship without any of the challenges or responsibilities that come with building a life with someone. She gets to have a boyfriend and the security of never having to grow up or leave her comfort zone. I'm starting to feel like I'm dating a teenager instead of a grown woman. Her parents have opinions about everything we do, from where we go on dates to how often I call her. Last week, her dad actually told me that he thinks I should be taking her to church more often because that's what a good boyfriend would do. I love her, but I'm 28 years old and I want a partner, not someone who needs her parents' permission to make basic life decisions. I don't know how much longer I can handle feeling like a guest in her family instead of her actual boyfriend. That story's over. 26 years old and still living like she's in high school is a massive red flag that goes way beyond family values. She's using marriage as a carrot to avoid any real commitment while keeping all the comfort of never having to be independent. This guy isn't dating a woman, he's dating someone who's afraid to become one. The fact that her parents are still making decisions about their relationship shows she's chosen to stay a child, and no healthy adult relationship can survive that dynamic. Our next story comes from Laura, who experienced something that would honestly make me reconsider everything about her relationship. My fiancé mocked my accent in front of his family. I'm originally from Alabama, and I moved to Chicago 5 years ago for work. I've always been a little self-conscious about my accent because people tend to make assumptions about Southern people, but my fiancé David has always told me he loves the way I talk and that it's one of the things that attracted him to me. Last weekend we went to his family's house for his cousin's birthday party. It was the first time I was meeting a lot of his extended family, and I was nervous about making a good impression. David's family is from the North Shore area, and they're all very educated, successful people. I work in finance and have my MBA, but I still sometimes feel like people judge my intelligence based on how I sound. The dinner was going well at first. I was talking to his aunt about my job, and she seemed genuinely interested in what I do. Then David's cousin asked me where I was from, and when I mentioned Alabama, the whole table kind of went quiet for a second. I could tell they were processing this information and probably making some mental adjustments about who they thought I was. That's when David decided to jump in and help the conversation along. He started doing this exaggerated impression of my accent, saying things like, "Well, bless your heart," and "You'll come back now," in this ridiculous cartoon Southern Belle voice. He was grinning like he thought he was being charming, but everyone at the table started laughing, and not in a way that felt inclusive. I felt my face get hot with embarrassment, but I tried to laugh it off because I didn't want to cause a scene. But David kept going. He started telling stories about things I had said, repeating them in this fake accent that sounded nothing like how I actually talk. He made me sound like some kind of hillbilly caricature. His family was eating it up. They were laughing and asking him to do more impressions, and some of them started chiming in with their own terrible Southern accents. I sat there feeling smaller and smaller, while the man I'm supposed to marry turned me into entertainment for his family. The worst part was when his grandmother said, "Oh, David, you're going to have to teach her how to talk properly before the wedding." Everyone laughed like this was the funniest thing they'd ever heard, including David. He didn't defend me or tell them that there's nothing wrong with how I talk. He just kept playing along with their jokes. I excused myself to go to the bathroom and ended up staying there for 10 minutes, trying not to cry. When I came back, they had moved on to other topics, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they all saw me as some kind of novelty that David had picked up during his travels to the backwoods south. On the drive home, I told David how hurt I was by what had happened. His response was that he was just trying to break the ice and help everyone feel more comfortable. He said his family can be intimidating, and he thought making light of our differences would help them warm up to me faster. I explained that he had made me feel like a joke instead of his partner, and that his family now probably thinks I'm some kind of uneducated stereotype. He said I was being too sensitive, and that his family actually liked me more after seeing that I could laugh at myself. But I wasn't laughing at myself. I was sitting there in humiliated silence while he mocked something I'm already insecure about. And the fact that he couldn't see why this was hurtful makes me wonder if he actually respects me at all. I keep thinking about his grandmother's comment about teaching me to talk properly. The woman I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with thinks there's something wrong with the way I speak, and my fiancé just nodded along like he agreed with her. I've been questioning whether I want to marry into a family that sees me as a project that needs to be fixed, and whether I can trust David to have my back when his family makes me feel unwelcome. If he can't defend me during our engagement, what's going to happen when we're actually married? That story is over. Your partner is supposed to be your safe space, not the person leading the charge in making fun of you. David threw her under the bus to get laughs from his family, and then had the nerve to tell her she was being too sensitive about it. The fact that he couldn't see why turning her into a punchline was wrong shows he doesn't respect her at all. His family's true colours came out that night, and so did his. Laura needs to seriously think about whether she wants to spend her life with someone who thinks her pain is funny. Our next story comes from Darren, who's dealing with restrictions that are making him question his "my boyfriend doesn't want me hanging out with my guy friends." We've been together for 8 months, and this issue has been getting progressively worse. When we first started dating, I told him about my friend group, which includes 3 guys that I've been close with since college. These aren't random dudes I met at bars. These are people who have been in my life for years, who know my family, who were there for me through breakups and job losses and all the major moments in my 20s. At first he seemed fine with it. He'd even suggest that I go hang out with them when I was stressed about work or needed to blow off steam. But somewhere around month 4, his attitude completely changed. He started making little comments about how it was weird that I had so many male friends, asking if I was sure nothing had ever happened between me and any of them, questioning why I needed to spend time with other guys when I had him. The comments escalated into arguments. He said that hanging out with other men while in a relationship was disrespectful to him and to our relationship. He claimed that most girlfriends don't maintain friendships with guys because they understand that it makes their boyfriends uncomfortable. He said if I really loved him, I would prioritise his feelings over some friendships. I tried explaining that these guys are like brothers to me. I've never had romantic feelings for any of them, and they've never expressed interest in me that way either. We hang out in groups, we talk about work and movies and stupid internet memes. There's nothing inappropriate or threatening about our friendship, but he insisted that guys can't be friends with girls without wanting something more, and that I was being naive if I thought otherwise. The situation came to a head last month when I made plans to go to a baseball game with 2 of my guy friends. I told my boyfriend about it weeks in advance, and he seemed okay with it at the time. But the morning of the game, he started a huge fight about it. He said he had been thinking about it and decided he wasn't comfortable with me going. He wanted me to cancel my plans and spend the day with him instead. I told him that wasn't fair because I had already committed to going with my friends and that he had known about these plans for weeks. If he had a problem with it, he should have said something earlier instead of waiting until the last minute to try to control what I did. He accused me of choosing my friends over him and said that a good girlfriend would understand why this bothered him. We ended up having this massive argument where he said some really hurtful things about my friends. He called them losers who were probably only pretending to be my friends because they wanted to sleep with me. He said I was too trusting and that they were just waiting for the right moment to make a move. He even suggested that maybe I liked the attention from them, and that's why I refused to cut contact. I went to the game anyway because I wasn't going to let him dictate who I could be friends with, but I felt terrible the entire time because I knew he was at home angry with me. I couldn't even enjoy myself because I was stressed about the fight we were going to have when I got back. When I got home, he gave me the silent treatment for 3 days. He would barely look at me, would give one-word answers to my questions, and made it clear that he was punishing me for going against his wishes. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and apologised just to make the tension stop. I told him I would be more considerate of his feelings in the future, but now I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around him. I haven't hung out with my guy friends in over a month because I don't want to deal with another fight. I decline their invitations and make excuses about being busy. They've started asking if everything is okay because I've basically disappeared from their lives. The worst part is that he's not satisfied with me avoiding group hangouts. Now he has a problem with me even texting my guy friends or liking their social media posts. He checks my phone regularly and questions me about any interaction I have with other men, even work colleagues or guys I barely know. I love my boyfriend and I want our relationship to work, but I feel like I'm losing myself. I've had to cut off friendships that were important to me, and I'm constantly worried about doing something that will set him off. I don't think it's normal or healthy for someone to have this much control over their partner's friendships, but he's convinced me that I'm the one being unreasonable. All my female friends tell me this is a red flag and that I should break up with him, but they don't understand how good things are between us when we're not fighting about this. He's sweet and attentive and makes me feel loved most of the time. I just wish he could trust me and understand that having male friends doesn't threaten our relationship. that story's over. This isn't about respect or love, it's about control. Isolating someone from their friends is classic manipulation, and the fact that he's punishing her with silent treatment when she doesn't comply makes it even worse. The right person won't make you choose between them and your support system. He's systematically breaking down her confidence and independence, and she's already apologising for things she shouldn't have to apologise for. This relationship is headed nowhere good. Let's move to our next story from someone who came home to a devastating discovery. My wife gave away my childhood collectibles. I've been collecting comic books since I was 8 years old. Over the past 20 years, I've built up a pretty impressive collection that includes some rare issues and first editions that are worth a decent amount of money. But more importantly, these comics represent my entire childhood and teenage years. Every single one has a memory attached to it, whether it's saving up my allowance to buy a specific issue or finding a rare comic at a garage sale with my dad. I keep my collection in our spare bedroom, organised in protective cases and stored carefully so they maintain their condition. My wife has always known how important these comics are to me. I've spent hours showing her my favourites, explaining why certain issues are special, and talking about the memories associated with different parts of my collection. She's never seemed particularly interested, but she's always been respectful of my hobby. Last week I had to travel for work for 5 days. When I left, everything in the spare room was exactly where it should be. My comics were organised by series and date, my action figures were displayed on their shelves, and my vintage posters were safely stored in tubes. I kissed my wife goodbye and told her I'd see her Friday night. When I got home Friday evening, I immediately knew something was wrong. The spare room door was closed, which was unusual because we normally leave it open. When I opened the door, my heart stopped. The room was completely empty. Every comic book, every action figure, every piece of memorabilia I'd collected over 2 decades was gone. I called for my wife, thinking maybe there had been a break-in or some kind of emergency that required moving everything. But when she came upstairs, she had this guilty look on her face that told me she knew exactly what had happened to my stuff. She explained that while I was gone, she had decided to declutter the house. She said the spare room was too crowded with my collection and that we needed the space for more practical purposes. She had packed everything up and donated it all to a local charity that supports underprivileged children. I was speechless. I asked her how she could give away 20 years of my life without even asking me first. She said she thought I was too attached to kids' stuff and that getting rid of it would help me grow up and focus on more adult priorities. She claimed she was doing me a favour by forcing me to let go of childish things. When I asked which charity she had donated everything to, thinking maybe I could get some of it back, she said she couldn't remember the name. She had just driven around until she found a place that would take it all. She seemed proud of herself for being so generous with my belongings. I tried explaining to her that some of those comics were worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, that she had literally thrown away a small fortune. But she didn't seem to care about the money. She kept saying that we don't need the money and that material possessions aren't important anyway. The financial loss is devastating, but it's not even the worst part. She threw away my childhood, every comic book my dad bought me, every issue I saved up for with birthday money, every piece of my collection that connected me to who I used to be. Gone because my wife decided it was clutter. When I got upset and raised my voice, she accused me of caring more about comic books than our marriage. She said if I was going to throw a tantrum over some old magazines, maybe I wasn't ready to be a husband. She made me feel like I was being unreasonable for being devastated that she had destroyed something so important to me. I've spent the past week calling every charity and thrift store in the area, trying to track down my collection. Most places couldn't help me, and the few that thought they might have received my items said they had already sold or distributed everything. It's all gone forever. My wife has been acting like nothing happened. She's been cheerful and affectionate, talking about how much better the spare room looks now, and how we can finally use it for guests. When I try to bring up what she did, she changes the subject or tells me I need to move on. I feel like I'm married to a stranger, The woman I thought I knew would never have done something so cruel and thoughtless. She violated my trust, destroyed something irreplaceable, and then acted like I'm the problem for being upset about it. I don't know how to get past this or if I even want to. That story's over. This wasn't decluttering. This was destruction of someone's identity and history. The fact that she can't even remember which charity she gave everything to shows how little she cared about what she was destroying. She basically erased 20 years of his life because she decided his interests were beneath him. The complete lack of remorse makes this even more horrifying. Some violations of trust can't be undone, and this feels like one of them. Moving on to our next story from Ethan, who's facing rejection in the most intimate part of his relationship. My partner refuses to sleep in the same bed. We've been living together for 1.5 years, and for the past 6 months, she's been sleeping in our guest room almost every night. It started occasionally, maybe once or twice a week, when she said she was having trouble sleeping, but now it's become the norm, and I'm starting to feel like we're roommates instead of partners. When we first moved in together, sharing a bed was one of the things I was most excited about. Not just for physical intimacy, but for those quiet moments before falling asleep and when waking up together. Some of my favourite times in our relationship were lying in bed talking about our days or our future plans, or just being close to each other as we drifted off to sleep. But now, almost every night around 10 or 11, she'll announce that she's going to sleep in the guest room. Her reasons vary depending on the night. Sometimes she says I snore too loud, other times she claims I move around too much and disturb her sleep. She'll say the mattress is too soft or too firm, that the room is too hot or too cold, that she has an early meeting and doesn't want to wake me up. I've tried addressing every concern she's brought up. I got a sleep study done and started using a CPAP machine for snoring I apparently didn't even know I had. I bought a new mattress that she picked out herself. I installed blackout curtains and a white noise machine. I even started taking melatonin to make sure I sleep more deeply and move around less. But no matter what changes I make, she always finds a new reason why she needs to sleep alone. Last week, she said my breathing was too loud. The week before, she complained that I take up too much space, even though I sleep on my side of the bed. It feels like she's looking for excuses to avoid sharing a bed with me. The worst part is how it's affecting our physical relationship. We used to be intimate regularly, but now that we don't share a bed, those opportunities have become rare. She says she's too tired by the time we're both home from work. And since we don't have those natural moments of closeness that come from sleeping together, everything feels forced and scheduled. I've tried talking to her about how this makes me feel, but she gets defensive and says I'm being selfish. She claims that everyone deserves a good night's sleep and that I should be more understanding of her needs. She says that just because we're in a relationship doesn't mean she has to sacrifice her comfort to make me happy. When I suggested that maybe we could compromise and she could sleep in the guest room just a few nights a week instead of every night, she said I was trying to control her sleeping arrangements. She accused me of being needy and clingy and said that healthy couples don't need to sleep together to maintain their relationship. But I've started noticing that she seems perfectly comfortable sleeping in hotel beds when we travel, or taking naps on our couch during the day. It's specifically our shared bed that she has a problem with. It makes me wonder if the issue isn't really about sleep quality, but about not wanting to be close to me. I feel rejected and unwanted every night when she announces she's going to the other room. It feels like another small rejection. I lie in our big bed alone, wondering what I did wrong or what changed between us. I miss the intimacy of sleeping next to the person I love, and I miss feeling like she actually wants to be near me. My friends think I'm overreacting and that separate bedrooms are becoming more common for couples who want better sleep. But this doesn't feel like a mutual decision about sleep quality. It feels like she's pulling away from me and using sleep as an excuse to avoid physical and emotional intimacy. I don't know how much longer I can handle feeling like my partner doesn't want to share the most basic form of intimacy with me. I feel like we're slowly becoming strangers, living in the same house, and I don't know how to bridge the gap that's growing between us. That story is over. When someone wants to be with you, they find ways to make it work, not excuses to avoid it. The fact that she sleeps fine everywhere else but suddenly has problems only in their shared bed says everything. This isn't about snoring or mattress firmness. It's about emotional distance disguised as sleep hygiene. He's trying to fix problems that aren't the real problem, while she's systematically removing intimacy from their relationship. The defensiveness when he brings it up is the biggest red flag of all. Our next story comes from Hannah, who's tired of constantly being disappointed. My girlfriend cancels plans at the last minute. We've been together for about 10 months, and this has become such a consistent pattern that I've stopped getting excited about anything we plan to do together. Every time we make plans, whether it's dinner, a movie, or even just hanging out at home, there's about a 50-50 chance she'll cancel with less than an hour's notice. It started early in our relationship, but I chalked it up to her being genuinely busy. She works in marketing and her schedule can be unpredictable. So when she texts me 30 minutes before our dinner reservation, saying she had to stay late for a client emergency, I tried to be understanding. I've had jobs with demanding schedules too, and I know how frustrating it can be when work interferes with your personal life. But as the months went on, I started noticing that her work emergencies seemed to happen at very convenient times. She'd be excited about our plans during the day, texting me about what she wanted to wear or what she was looking forward to, and then suddenly, at the last minute, there would be some crisis that required her immediate attention. The excuses have gotten more creative over time. Last month, she cancelled a weekend trip we'd been planning for 6 weeks because she said her sister needed help moving. But when I checked her sister's social media later, she was posting pictures from a girls' night out, not packing boxes. 2 weeks ago, she bailed on a concert we had tickets for because she claimed she was getting sick, but then posted Instagram stories of herself out at bars with her co-workers that same night. What really bothers me is how casual she is about it. She'll send a quick text saying, "Sorry babe, can't make it tonight, work stuff," and then act like it's no big deal. She doesn't seem to understand how disappointing it is to get ready for a date, drive to meet her, and then get a text as I'm parking that she's not coming. I've started making backup plans for every date we schedule because I've learned not to count on her showing up. I'll tell friends that I might be free later in case she cancels, or I'll make sure I have something else I can do if she bails. It's exhausting having to prepare for disappointment every time we make plans. When I've tried to talk to her about this pattern, she gets defensive and says, I don't understand how stressful her job is. She claims that I'm being unsupportive and that a good partner would be more flexible about schedule changes. She says that if I really cared about her, I would prioritise her career success over our social plans. But I've noticed that she never seems to have these last-minute work emergencies when she's making plans with her friends. She'll move mountains to make it to her friend's birthday party or a work happy hour, but our dinner reservations are apparently expendable. It makes me feel like I'm at the bottom of her priority list, like I'm the thing she cancels when something better comes up. The worst incident happened last weekend when she cancelled our anniversary dinner 2 hours before we were supposed to meet. She said her boss needed her to finish a presentation for Monday morning. I had made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first date, gotten dressed up, and even bought her a small gift. When she texted me that she couldn't make it, I just sat in my car in the restaurant parking lot, feeling like an idiot. Later that night, I saw on her friend's Snapchat story that they were all out at karaoke together. My girlfriend was right there in the background, laughing and singing along, clearly having a great time. She hadn't even had the decency to lie convincingly about why she was cancelling on me. When I confronted her about it the next day, she said the work thing had wrapped up early and her friends had invited her out to blow off steam. She didn't understand why I was upset since she had already told me she couldn't do dinner. She said I was being possessive and trying to control who she spent time with. I feel like I'm always the one being flexible and understanding while she does whatever she wants, without considering how it affects me. I've rearranged my schedule countless times to accommodate her last-minute requests to hang out. But when I need her to stick to plans we've made, there's always some excuse. I'm starting to think she just doesn't respect me or our relationship enough to prioritize our time together. It feels like she's keeping me as a backup option for when nothing better is going on, and I'm tired of feeling like an afterthought in my own relationship. That story is over. When someone consistently chooses everything else over you, they're showing you exactly how much you mean to them. The fact that she never cancels on friends but always cancels on him isn't a coincidence. It's a choice. She's treating him like a convenience store that's always there when she needs something, but never worth making an effort for. The anniversary dinner incident was just cruel, and her response to being caught showed zero remorse. Hannah deserves someone who actually wants to spend time with her. Let's dive into our next story, from someone whose partner's phone habits are raising serious. My boyfriend refuses to delete his dating apps. We've been together for over a year now, and this is something that's been bothering me for months. When we first started dating, I figured he would delete the apps once we became exclusive, but he never did. At first, I didn't want to seem clingy or controlling by bringing it up, so I just assumed he'd get rid of them on his own once our relationship got more serious. About 6 months into dating, I finally worked up the courage to ask him about it. I mentioned that I had deleted all my dating apps after we became official and asked if he had done the same. He got this weird look on his face and said he still had them but wasn't really using them anymore. When I asked why he kept them if he wasn't using them, he said he liked to scroll through them sometimes when he was bored, just to see what was out there. He claimed it was like window shopping and that it didn't mean anything. He compared it to looking at cars online even when you're not planning to buy one, which seemed like a strange comparison to me. I tried to explain that it made me uncomfortable, knowing he was still looking at other women on dating apps while we were in a committed relationship. I said it felt like he was keeping his options open in case something better came along. He got defensive and said I was being insecure and that he wasn't actually talking to anyone or meeting up with anyone. He insisted that just looking at profiles was harmless and that I should trust him. He said if I really trusted him, I wouldn't care about him having the apps because I'd know he wasn't going to cheat on me. He made me feel like I was being paranoid and controlling for even bringing it up. But the thing is, I've seen him using the apps. I've watched him swipe through profiles while we're sitting on the couch together. He'll be scrolling through Tinder or Bumble like it's Instagram, rating women's photos and reading their bios. When I point out that this seems inappropriate, he says he's just bored and that it's not different from people watching at the mall. Last month, I was using his phone to call my own phone because I couldn't find it, and I accidentally opened one of his dating apps. He'd been active on it that morning, and his profile was still fully updated with recent photos. When I confronted him about this, he said he sometimes updates his profile to see if he can get more matches, but that it's just for entertainment and validation. The fact that he's actively maintaining his dating profile while we're in a relationship feels like a huge red flag to me. If you're truly committed to someone, why do you need validation from strangers on dating apps? Why do you care about getting matches if you're happy with your current relationship? I've noticed that he's particularly active on the apps when we've had an argument or when things are stressful between us. It's like he turns to these other options when our relationship hits any kind of bump, which makes me feel like he's not fully invested in working through problems with me. My friends all think this is completely inappropriate and that he's essentially shopping for my replacement while pretending to be committed to me. They say that keeping active dating profiles is a form of emotional cheating and that I should give him an ultimatum about deleting them. When I've brought this up in recent conversations, he accuses me of trying to control him and says that I'm being jealous for no reason. He claims that lots of people in relationships keep their dating apps just for fun and that I'm overreacting to something harmless. But I can't shake the feeling that someone who is truly happy and committed in their relationship wouldn't need or want to browse through potential dates every day. It makes me question whether he sees our relationship as permanent or if he's just with me until something better comes along. The worst part is that it's making me paranoid and insecure in ways I've never been before. I find myself wondering if he's comparing me to the women he sees on these apps, if he wishes I looked like them, if he's disappointed that he's stuck with me when there are all these other options available. I love him and I want our relationship to work, but I don't know how to get past this issue. Every time I see him on his phone, I wonder if he's swiping through dating profiles. It's creating this constant, underlying tension in our relationship that I don't know how to resolve. That story's over. The mental gymnastics this guy is doing to justify keeping dating apps is honestly impressive. Window shopping for people while you're in a relationship isn't harmless entertainment. It's keeping one foot out the door. The fact that he gets more active on them after fights shows he's literally shopping for her replacement every time they have problems. If someone needs validation from dating apps while they're supposedly committed to you, they're not actually committed to you. Our next story comes from Brian, who's dealing with a major breach of trust that's affecting his entire marriage. My husband told his mum about our fertility struggles. My wife and I have been trying to conceive for about 2 years now, and it's been the most emotionally difficult experience of our lives. We've been through multiple rounds of testing, fertility treatments and disappointments that have taken a huge toll on both of us emotionally and financially. From the beginning, we agreed that we would keep our fertility journey private between the two of us. We didn't want family members asking constant questions, giving unsolicited advice, or making us feel like we had to update everyone on our progress. We decided that when we were ready to share news, whether good or bad, we would do it together on our own terms. My wife has been incredibly private about this whole process. She doesn't even tell her closest friends what we're going through because she finds it too painful to discuss. She says that talking about it with other people makes her feel like a failure, and she'd rather deal with it privately until we have something positive to share. Last month, we had a particularly devastating appointment where we found out that our latest round of IVF had failed. My wife was completely heartbroken, and we spent the weekend just holding each other and grieving what felt like another lost opportunity to start our family. It was one of the lowest points in our marriage, and we were both emotionally drained. A few days later, I was having lunch with my mum, and I guess I was still processing everything we'd been through. Without really thinking about it, I started talking about how hard things had been lately and how worried I was about my wife. Before I knew it, I had told her about our fertility struggles, the failed IVF attempt, and how devastated we both were. My mum was sympathetic and supportive, asking questions about the process and offering to help in any way she could. She said she had suspected something was going on because we'd been married for 4 years and she knew we wanted children. She promised to keep everything confidential and said she just wanted to be there for us during this difficult time. I felt better after talking to someone about what we'd been going through, and I thought my mum would respect our privacy and not mention it to anyone else. But apparently, I was wrong about that. Last weekend, we were at a family barbecue, and my aunt pulled my wife aside to tell her how sorry she was about our baby troubles. My wife looked confused and asked what she meant. My aunt explained that my mum had told her about our fertility issues and that the whole family was praying for us and hoping things would work out soon. My wife was mortified. She came home from the barbecue in tears, asking me how everyone could possibly know about something so private. That's when I had to admit that I had told my mum about our situation and that she had apparently shared it with other family members. The look of betrayal on my wife's face was devastating. She said she felt humiliated knowing that all these people were aware of our most personal struggle, pitying us, and probably discussing our inability to have children behind our backs. She said she'd specifically asked me to keep this between us, and I had violated that trust by sharing her private medical information with my family. I tried to explain that I hadn't meant for it to spread beyond my mum, that I was just struggling and needed someone to talk to. But my wife pointed out that I could have talked to a therapist or a counsellor instead of family members. She said that by telling my mum, I had essentially told the entire family because my mum has never kept a secret in her life. She's right about that. My mum means well, but she's always been a gossip who shares personal information under the guise of asking for prayers or support. I should have known that telling her anything sensitive would result in it becoming family knowledge. My wife has been incredibly hurt and angry since finding out. She says she feels exposed and vulnerable, knowing that people are looking at her with pity every time we see them. She started declining invitations to family events because she doesn't want to face the awkward conversations and sympathetic looks. The worst part is that now family members keep bringing it up, offering advice, sharing stories about other couples who struggled with fertility, and asking for updates on our treatments. My wife has to either discuss something she wants to keep private or come across as rude for not engaging with their questions. She's told me that she feels like I chose my need for support over her need for privacy, and that I prioritized my own emotional needs without considering how my actions would affect her. She says she doesn't know if she can trust me with sensitive information anymore because I've proven that I'll share her personal business when I'm struggling. I feel terrible about breaking her trust, but I also feel like I was just trying to cope with an incredibly difficult situation. I didn't realize how much damage it would cause to tell my mum, and I genuinely thought she would keep it confidential. I've apologized repeatedly, but my wife says sorry isn't enough to undo the violation of her privacy. Our marriage is already strained from the fertility struggles, and now we're dealing with this additional layer of betrayal and broken trust. I don't know how to make this right, or how to rebuild the trust I've damaged. That story is over. When someone specifically asks you to keep something private, especially something as personal as fertility struggles, you keep it private. Period. Brian knew his mum was a gossip, but told her anyway because he wanted emotional support, completely disregarding his wife's feelings and boundaries. Now she has to face pitying looks and invasive questions about the most painful part of her life. Some betrayals of trust cut deep enough to change how someone sees their partner forever, and this feels like one of them. Let's move to our next story from Lily, who's dealing with financial inequality that's causing major relationship problems. My girlfriend refuses to share rent. We've been living together for about 8 months now, and the financial arrangement we have is starting to cause serious problems in our relationship. When we first decided to move in together, I assumed we would split all the household expenses equally, since we both work full-time and make roughly the same salary. I make about $62,000 a year working in accounting, and she makes about $58,000 as a graphic designer. The difference in our income is minimal, maybe $300 a month after taxes. But when it came time to discuss how we'd handle rent and utilities, she immediately said she thought I should pay more because I'm the man. At first I thought she was joking because we've always seemed pretty progressive in our views about gender roles. She has her own career, she's financially independent, and she's always been vocal about women's equality in the workplace. But she was completely serious about expecting me to shoulder the majority of our household expenses. She explained that even though we make similar amounts of money, she has more expenses than I do because women's clothing, beauty products, and personal care items cost more than men's. She said that the pink tax means she's already paying more just to exist as a woman, so it would be unfair to ask her to pay half of everything on top of that. I tried to point out that her personal care expenses are choices she makes, not requirements, and that I have my own expenses like gym memberships and car maintenance that she doesn't have. But she said those weren't comparable because my expenses are optional, while hers are necessary for her to look professional at work. We eventually agreed that I would pay 60% of the rent and utilities, which comes out to about $400 more per month than what she pays. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I wanted to avoid conflict and I figured I could afford the extra expense. But over time, I've noticed that this arrangement has created other problems. She's become very comfortable spending her money on things for herself, while expecting me to cover most of our shared expenses. When we go out to dinner, she automatically assumes I'll pay. When we need groceries or household supplies, she expects me to handle those costs too. Last month, she spent almost $800 on new clothes and makeup, while I was stretching my budget to cover our increased utility bills during the summer heat. When I mentioned that maybe she could contribute more to the household expenses if she had money for a shopping spree, she got defensive and said her personal spending shouldn't affect our agreed-upon arrangement. The breaking point came when our dishwasher broke and we needed to replace it. The repair guy said it would cost more to fix than to buy a new one, so we started looking at replacements. I found a decent mid-range dishwasher for about $600, but she wanted a high-end model that cost almost $1,500. When I said the expensive one was outside our budget, she said that if we were going to upgrade, we should get something nice that would last. She suggested that I could put it on my credit card and we could pay it off over time. When I asked how we were going to pay it off, she said I would handle the payments since I'm responsible for the major household expenses. I realised that she had started viewing me as the primary financial provider for our household, even though we're not married, and she makes almost as much money as I do. She's created this system where she gets to keep most of her income for personal use, while I'm expected to fund our lifestyle. When I tried to renegotiate our financial arrangement and suggest that we split everything 50-50, she accused me of being cheap and not caring about her financial struggles as a woman. She said that men who truly care about their partners want to take care of them financially, and that my reluctance to pay more proved I didn't value her. She compared our situation to her friends' relationships, where the men pay for most everything, even when their girlfriends work. She said it was embarrassing for her to have a boyfriend who nitpicked about money and expected her to pay equally for everything. But I don't think asking her to contribute fairly to our shared expenses is nitpicking. I think she's using gender stereotypes to justify an unfair financial arrangement that benefits her at my expense. She wants the independence of having her own career and income, but she also wants the financial security of having someone else cover her major expenses. I've started resenting the fact that I'm working just as hard as she is, but have less money to show for it because I'm subsidizing her lifestyle. I feel like she's taking advantage of my willingness to compromise, and I'm tired of being treated like an ATM instead of an equal partner. When I've suggested that maybe she should find a place she can afford on her own, if she doesn't want to split our current expenses equally, she says I'm threatening to break up with her over money and that I'm being manipulative. I love her and I want our relationship to work, but I don't think this financial arrangement is sustainable or fair. I shouldn't have to choose between being financially taken advantage of or being labelled as a bad boyfriend who doesn't support his partner. That story's over. She wants feminist independence when it benefits her and traditional gender roles when it's time to pay bills. You can't demand equality in everything except the parts that cost you money. The fact that she's comfortable blowing $800 on shopping while he struggles with utilities shows exactly how she views this arrangement. She's not fighting the pink tax. She's using it as an excuse to make him subsidize her entire lifestyle while keeping her income for fun money. Our next story comes from someone whose partner's secretive behaviour is raising serious red flags. My fiancé hides his phone every time I walk in. We've been engaged for 6 months and living together for over a year, but lately his behaviour around his phone has become really strange and concerning. It started subtly, but now it's gotten to the point where it's affecting my trust in him and our relationship. When we first started dating, he was pretty open with his phone. He'd leave it on the counter when he showered, ask me to check his messages if he was driving, and would even hand it to me to show me funny videos or photos. It never felt like he was hiding anything, and I never felt the need to go through his phone or question what he was doing on it. But about 3 months ago, I started noticing that he would quickly flip his phone over or close apps whenever I came into the room. At first, I thought maybe he was planning something for my birthday or looking at engagement rings, so I didn't think much of it. But my birthday came and went, and the secretive behaviour only got worse. Now, every single time I walk into a room where he's using his phone, he immediately turns the screen away from me or puts the phone face down. If I sit next to him on the couch, he'll angle his body so I can't see what he's doing. If I come up behind him while he's texting, he'll quickly close whatever he was looking at. The most obvious change is that he started taking his phone with him everywhere, even just to go to the bathroom or get a drink from the kitchen. He used to leave it charging on his nightstand when he went to bed, but now he keeps it right next to his pillow and checks it constantly throughout the night. When I've asked him about it directly, he gets defensive and says, "I'm being paranoid." He claims he's not hiding anything and that he just values his privacy. He says that just because we're engaged doesn't mean we need to know every detail of each other's digital lives, and that wanting some phone privacy is normal and healthy. But this isn't just wanting privacy. This is actively concealing what he's doing from me. There's a difference between not volunteering information and deliberately hiding your screen every time your partner walks by. His behavior has become so obvious that even our friends have started noticing it when we're out together. Last weekend, we were at dinner with another couple and his phone buzzed with a text. He grabbed it so quickly and held it so close to his chest while reading it that our friends exchanged looks. Later, the wife pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay because she'd never seen someone be so secretive about their phone in front of their fiancé. I've also noticed that he's started using his phone more frequently when I'm around, but in a way that feels secretive rather than casual. He'll sit across the room from me and text for long periods, smiling at his screen in ways that make me wonder who he's talking to. When I ask who he's texting, he gives vague answers like, "just a friend," or "work stuff." The worst incident happened last week when I accidentally walked in on him while he was video chatting with someone. He immediately hung up and claimed it was a work call, but I could see that whoever he was talking to was clearly not in an office setting. The background looked like someone's bedroom or living room, and I'm pretty sure I heard a woman's voice before he ended the call. When I asked about it, he got angry and accused me of spying on him. He said that I was becoming suspicious and paranoid, and that my behaviour was driving him to be more secretive, because he felt like he was being monitored all the time. He turned the whole situation around and made me feel like I was the problem for noticing his obvious changes in behaviour. I've started questioning everything about our relationship. If he's not doing anything wrong, why does he need to hide his phone from me? Why has his behaviour changed so dramatically over the past few months? What is he so afraid of me seeing? The trust issues are starting to affect other parts of our relationship too. I find myself analysing his facial expressions when he's texting, wondering who he's talking to and what they're discussing. I've started paying attention to when he's on his phone and trying to figure out patterns in his secretive behaviour. I've considered asking him to show me his phone just to put my mind at ease, but I don't want to be that kind of partner who demands to go through their significant other's private messages. At the same time, his behaviour has become so suspicious that I feel like I need some kind of reassurance that I am not being betrayed. We're supposed to be planning our wedding, but instead I'm lying awake at night, wondering if the man I'm engaged to is hiding something that could destroy our relationship. I don't know if I'm overreacting to normal privacy boundaries, or if my instincts are telling me something is seriously wrong. That story is over. When someone's phone habits change overnight, from open to Fort Knox security, something is definitely going on. You don't suddenly start hiding your screen from your fiancé unless there's something on there you don't want them to see. The fact that he's turned it around and made her feel crazy for noticing his obvious behavioural changes is classic manipulation. Trust your gut when someone's actions don't match their words, especially when those actions involve hiding communication from the person they're supposed to marry. Let's move to our next story from James, who's watching his social life disappear along with his relationship. My wife never wants to go out anymore. We've been married for 3 years, and over the past year she's become increasingly reluctant to leave the house for any kind of social activity. What used to be a couple that enjoyed trying new restaurants, going to movies and spending time with friends, has turned into me constantly trying to convince her to participate in any activity that involves leaving our living room. When we were dating and during our first couple years of marriage, she was actually the more social one between us. She'd suggest weekend trips, plan date nights, organise dinner parties with our friends, and was always up for trying new experiences. She loved exploring the city, checking out new bars and restaurants, and meeting new people. But sometime last year, she started declining invitations and making excuses to avoid social plans. At first, she'd say she was tired from work or that she didn't feel like being around people that particular night. I figured everyone goes through phases where they want to stay home more, so I didn't push it. As the months went on, her reluctance to go out became more pronounced. She'd agree to plans when I suggested them, but then on the day of whatever we had planned, she'd try to get out of it. She'd complain about being tired, say she wasn't feeling well, or suddenly remember something else she needed to do at home. Now, she flat out refuses to make any social plans at all. When I suggest going out to dinner, she says we can just order takeout. When I mention a movie that looks good, she says we can stream something at home. When friends invite us to parties or gatherings, she automatically declines without even considering it. Last month, my college roommate was in town for one night and wanted to meet for drinks. I hadn't seen him in over 2 years, and it was the only opportunity I'd have to catch up with him before he moved overseas for work. When I told my wife about it, she said I should go without her because she didn't feel like going out. I asked her to reconsider because she had met my friend before and gotten along with him well, and because it meant a lot to me to have her there for this goodbye dinner. She got irritated and said she shouldn't have to force herself to be social just because I wanted her to be, and that I was being selfish for pressuring her. I ended up going alone, and it was awkward having to explain why my wife couldn't be bothered to say goodbye to someone who had been an important part of my life. My friend asked if everything was okay at home, and I didn't know how to explain that my wife had become a hermit who refused to participate in normal social activities. The situation has gotten so bad that we haven't been out together as a couple in over 4 months. Not to dinner, not to a movie, not even for a walk around the neighbourhood. Every evening and weekend is spent sitting on our couch watching Netflix or scrolling through our phones in silence. When I try to talk to her about how isolating this has become, she says she's perfectly happy staying home and doesn't understand why I need constant entertainment. She claims that wanting to go out all the time is immature and that married couples should be content spending quiet time together at home. But this isn't about needing constant entertainment. It's about maintaining some kind of social life and shared experiences outside of our living room. I feel like we're becoming strangers who happen to live in the same house, rather than partners who enjoy each other's company and explore life together. I've started going to social events alone, which feels weird and makes me look like either a bachelor or someone whose wife doesn't like being around people. Friends have stopped inviting us places because they know she'll decline, and I'm tired of always being the single guy at couple events. The worst part is that she doesn't seem to care how this affects me or our relationship. When I express frustration about our lack of social life, she acts like I'm being needy and unreasonable. She says that if I want to go out so badly, I should just go by myself, completely missing the point that I want to share experiences with my wife. I've suggested that maybe she's dealing with depression or anxiety that's making her want to isolate, and offered to help her find a therapist or talk to someone about what she's going through. But she insists she's fine, and that she simply prefers staying home now that she's older and more settled. I love my wife, but I feel like I'm living with a roommate who happens to share my last name rather than a partner who wants to build a life with me. I don't know how to reconnect with someone who has no interest in connecting with the outside world or even with me beyond our basic daily routine. That story is over. Marriage shouldn't mean the end of having a life outside your house. The fact that she won't even consider his feelings about wanting shared experiences shows she's checked out of the partnership part of their marriage. Either she's dealing with something deeper that she won't address, or she's decided that marriage means she doesn't have to put in effort anymore. Either way, James is basically married to a ghost who happens to pay half the mortgage. If you're still around, congratulations, you just made it through around 40 stories, something like that. If you loved it, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more. Thanks for sticking around, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.